Hello, good evening, and welcome to Cinematronics / Do You Expect Us to Talk / Summer Review Part 2 edition. I'm your host, Chris Cinematronics, and joining me as seemingly as always, Mr. David Bond.
Good evening, folks. You have done another episode between the two parts of the summer review, which I had no knowledge of till it popped up in my feed. No. And then I was like, oh, right.
Yeah, it was my first / interview. Yeah, so you can check that out. It's on there.
Well, yeah, you rebooted the show with an interview with me in about March 2017, and we thought we're off to the races.
Who knows? I might slip another episode without David.
Yeah, so I had to listen to it, actually. It was Ty Singh, author of, what was the book? Born to Be Bad?
Born to Be Bad, yeah. But essentially, it's a book about like various interviews with
actors who've portrayed movie villains.
Yeah, so a lot of like kind of henchmen's like, oh, that guy. So he's got a whole segment of like all the Die Hard villains, or most of them, which I said on the podcast. I had no idea that one of them was Necros from Living Daylights.
I've heard. I promise you, I have heard that show, but I've actually forgotten even having heard the show.
Yeah, he's the first guy Bruce Willis kills. You know, the brother of the two German brothers.
Of course he is.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was like, oh shit, he is, isn't he?
It could have been any sort of Aryan henchman, though, couldn't it?
Yeah, but yeah.
Whereas in Bond, despite the number of Aryan henchmen they've had, Necros does stand out.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly because he's like the main villain, isn't he? But and he's a bit in Die Hard. He's a bit nerdy looking, so he's a bit like, you know, he's in a sweater and glasses, and he doesn't.
Oh yeah. I think I can sort of picture it now. Obviously, I'll be looking out for it next time.
Definitely, yeah. He looks like he's not like as intimidating as the others, even though he's still like a big, tall.
Did I dream it, or did he speak to Stephen Burkoff?
He did.
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, he's quite an intense fellow."
So, yeah, I've heard that sort of thing about Stephen Burkoff. Stephen Burkoff, for those listening who can't place him, probably best known as the lead villain in Beverly Hills Cop, but he's also the sort of mad general in Octopussy. Those are the two things he's probably best known for in terms of villain roles.
He's in Rambo 2 as well.
Of course he is, yeah. Yeah. Ty was a really great guest. He was incredibly natural behind the microphone.
Yeah. I think he does that for. He's doing. He's helping out with a production on this film about 80s action heroes, which should be worthwhile watching once it's released.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to see how that is, because it's obviously that's my era.
But for those of you listening on the Do You Expect Us to Talk theme, which will be the majority now, because that's where most of the product comes out, that's on the Cinematronics feed or at the website. It is,
and I do actually recommend getting the book if you can get it. It's available on Amazon. It's worth a read, because it's like it's a collection of a bunch of guys go, oh shit, it's that guy, and obviously, as you expect, we've got a lot of interesting stuff to say, like behind the scenes and kind of anecdotes, kind of thing. So it's definitely worth your time.
He got people, you know.
He did.
He hasn't gone out to do this, and he's got like the fourth most famous henchman in like the fifth Die Hard film or something.
Yeah, he got really good gets. Like, it means the mere fact that he got like majority of the Die Hard like villains, bar Alan Rickman, obviously.
That would have been impressive.
Yeah, did a seance. Like, oh, bless. So,
what did he say? He said he misses his wife and he's very lonely.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I really recommend the show. Because I would anyway, even if it had been shit. I'd sit here and say that. Let's be honest. But I was really taken aback. This guy was, not only did he know his stuff, but he was incredibly natural behind the microphone. He's really good.
Yeah, and also it's like we could go into like other stuff like The Room and things like that. Yeah. Like he's obviously interviewed Tommy Wiseau and
I remember that bit. I was playing a video game at the time, so the very mention of it just put me back to where I was in that video game. Oh yeah, I was trying to do that really difficult fucking bit, and you were talking about the room. Yeah.
I mean, just the mere fact that he actually had Greg Sestero for around Christmas, I was like, that must be the oddest thing in the world. But anyway, I digress. So we're returning back to summer after it's been a bit of a weird summer, hasn't it? Like, I feel like the last part, it just seems like there doesn't seem to be that many big films, and it's like they've got like a large chunk of it out like sooner rather than later, and now we just kind of hit like no one's really.
It was a little bit front loaded. I mean, on paper, if you said to me you're going to get 2 Marvel films, one of them like a big ticket Marvel film.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Panther did phenomenally well, but you know what I mean. The team ups are only every few years, so you're going to get one of those. You're going to get a real sort of throwback Spielberg film. You're going to get a Deadpool film. You're going to get a Star Wars film. You're going to get a Jurassic Park film. You're going to get a Pixar film. You're going to get a Mission Impossible film. In fact, three Marvel films. I forgot the one we're going to cover tonight. I was thinking of the first part. All of that, you just think that just sounds ram-packed, but for all the size of it, and it's been quite a big box office year so far as well, in terms of, it does do that sometimes. You get, they're down this year. Well, they're up this year. They're significantly up this year. It's felt a bit thin for everything, and I don't know if that is because we covered 2 or 3 of the big ones in the first one, and also there's a lot of sort of B-movie summer releases this year, like Pacific Rim sequel with less famous people.
Well, yeah, you had Skyscraper, didn't you? Which
Skyscraper's as big B-movie as it comes, and within like 2 or 3 films of that, The Meg, which is very B-movie as well. And I'm not pronouncing on the value of those types of films. I'm really not, and we'll talk about them, I hope, fairly, but. Yeah, they aren't. They're sort of they're the films you go and watch half ironically, and it's really odd because if I look at the big ticket items, it's as big as any other year. I think maybe that some of the stuff we don't think is going to gross as big isn't as prestige. Whereas you go back a year or 2 and you had like War for the Planet of the Apes, which was never going to be like the highest grossing of the year. But it was like, what a supporting player to some of those other films, whereas this year it is stuff like Skyscraper. I don't know. It's been a bit of an odd year. I wouldn't say it's been a bad one, but it's just an odd thing. We've done 2 parts to this show, so it's our longest review ever for quite a thin year.
I want to sort of like say it's probably down to the World Cup, like sort of dividing it, because what I don't understand is like when the World Cup is on. And I get why you have like maybe some of the major releases sort of disbanding around that time.
Yeah.
But they have like sort of say like the alternate. So you had like Ocean's 8 around that time.
Yeah.
But they also theoretically had Mamma Mia, which came out a week after the World Cup, which made 0 sense to me.
Yeah, and we don't mean to sound sexist because we're not saying women can't like football. We're just saying that. If you dig into like the viewership, it is strongly predominantly male. So most of the counter programming at cinemas does tend to be in a World Cup year, rom-coms, kids films, that sort of thing. Things that either
and Incredibles 2 as well. Why is like
well, it's either things that women can go to with their friends, or women can take the kids to while the blokes are watching football. Which sounds as sexist as it comes. We don't mean it to, but years of them programming it like this tells us that actually that's what the data's telling them to do.
Well, yeah, but I mean, let's face it. If you go to like a pub watching like a football match, it's going to be majority male.
Yeah.
So it's it's not like
we're saying majority.
I wouldn't say it's like completely sexist because it is like based on like general viewership, but I mean, but with that thought process, you would think you'd spread it out a bit.
You wouldn't generally move a Mamma Mia type film to avoid the World Cup, but you probably would move the Expendables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, like, It seems odd to me because like Skyscraper came out during the World Cup, but Mamma Mia came out a week after, and I just think, well, wouldn't it be more advisable to do that the other way around?
It's funny because the vast majority of men I know are not really big football fans.
Well, yeah, me
But
neither.
the vast majority. And yeah, it's one of those things that pop culture would you believe all men are obsessed with it. I got a little bit drawn in for a while just because like England did a little bit better than expected. So I thought, oh well, I'll watch a bit. But out of I don't know how many games there are at the World Cup, but let's say if there's 120 games or something, I'll probably watch 6.
Yeah, I was always a naysayer about it though. I was always pretty much like, it's like when they were like, we could do it. I was like, we won't. Like,
no, we won't because we haven't played anyone any good. Don't get too excited.
Who's we got kicked out by? I've forgotten now.
Oh, I can't remember myself now. Croatia, wasn't it?
Was it in Croatia? I mean, even when we had that game where I've forgotten the side now, but they played really dirty, and it came to penalty shootouts.
That was Colombia.
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 And we were like,
dirty.
and it was sort of, it was almost as if it was like semi-final type sort of thing. It's like, calm down.
It's the second round, yeah.
Like,
I think the only thing I resent is like in general, like semi-finals, not a bad performance, fairly young team, not overly high expectations. But what pisses me off is when they get a hero's welcome back, and you're thinking, how embarrassing is that? Going out in the semi-finals and like open top fucking bus parades, piss off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
no one remember unless you're from that country. No one remembers years on who gets to the semi-final. You might remember the finalists because you might remember the final. That's it. We didn't get to the final, so I can't really get too excited about it, to be honest. But
yeah, I say, there was potential for like a fresh start, like a fresh new team. So just remove the ego aspect from it, and from that, I kind of think, yeah, all right, I take my hat off to him, and they had a good go. There was less of an ego, but
there weren't a load of wags in the stand, were there? I mean, wives and girlfriends were probably there, but they weren't laced with a load of like fucking over made up pop stars and shit like that.
Yeah.
It just didn't have the same feel to it, did it?
But we still had. But I think I still have the same criticism. It's not necessarily addressed at the players. It's the shit surrounding it. It's the kind of like, I mean, I'm all for being like, yeah, come on, we can do this thing. But when it's like, we need to start being realistic. We need to start holding account. I mean, that game against Colombia, was it? I've got that right, yeah, Colombia. Where they don't like. I understand they were playing dirty, but for the last half of the game, they looked like the side who generally looked like they wanted to win, regardless whether they're playing fair or not. And that speaks volumes to me. And I'm sorry when we won on penalties and we were like, yeah, I'll cheer. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. That's not going to win us the game. That's not going to win us the tournament, because we pretty much just threw it out the window in the second half, and we let a team that played a bit unfairly kind of just get to us, and then we go, oh well, no, they cheated. It's like, no, you need to actually properly try to win this thing. You can't keep on getting at them, and that's what annoys me about England and the attitude towards it. We just have a blinkered attitude.
It's all football with you, isn't it?
Yeah, you're always trying to shut me up about football, aren't you, when you're on douchebag to talk. But
I stopped listening a couple of minutes ago. I thought he's off on one.
No, but it's just that attitude that really annoys me. It's like, come on, let's just have a bit of perspective here. Like, we're not that good. We need to start realising it before we can actually...
I don't have a problem with saying they had a decent tournament. In fact, a better than expected tournament. I do have a problem with, this will be held up as like, one of the great England World Cups, and like, fuck off, semi-final. Like, I mean, I know they went out in the group stage, but most times Germany can do that with like... And in
a tournament where all major players did really badly anyway. So we had no real proper competitors.
No. Oh, well.
But anyway.
So, yeah. We need to counter... That's probably... We've just done the same thing, bit meta, isn't it? We've moved our Do You Expect Us to Talk recording to avoid clashing with us talking about the World Cup.
While actually talking about the World Cup. Meta.
We're recording this about a week or so earlier than we would, although we knew the last film tonight was the last film we were going to cover. So it was any time, but normally we record it to go out at the start of September because summer's finished. To be honest, we'll just stick this out. But Becca has the worst Wi-Fi in the world at the moment, and I had problems with mine last week, and mine's been fixed and hers hasn't. And she cannot maintain like a stable Skype line for us to like talk to her properly. So she's just said, go ahead and do this tonight. We'll try and see if we can get that sorted by midweek, because we are ready to talk about the Avengers, and I think Captain America should come out tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be out tomorrow. Well,
yeah. So I say tonight, tomorrow. Yeah, we're recording. Yeah, we're recording on the Sunday night, and the Sunday night before this comes out, because it won't take a week for this to come out. But so last time we talked about, what did we talk about? We started with Black Panther. And we went through to Solo. It was about 7 films last time.
Yes.
I've got a list of about 8 tonight, but there's one that we talked about. Had I not mentioned it in part 1, I wouldn't mention it here, because it's only sort of tangentially a summer film anyway. It's only a summer film by when it was released. But I didn't get to see it. I couldn't make it the first weekend. And then I was convinced I was going to double bill it with something the second weekend. I think it may have been Skyscraper or something like that. And it either dropped out of the cinema totally, or its timings just didn't fit. Like they had one showing at 11 p.m. or something, and I didn't.
That's Cineworld for you.
Well, it's View down here, but they're all the fucking same. Yeah, we've got a Cineworld coming soon, but it really did piss me off because I did want to see this film. Sicario 2, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sicario is a big favourite, I think, especially on film Twitter. And I rewatched it again.
And it was Dennis Villeneuve, who's a real darling of film Twitter at the moment.
Very, very much so. Sicario 2, I thought that I really enjoyed it. It felt like it matched the tone really well, and it did something which I didn't expect, which was to actually add a bit of texture to the Josh Brolin character. I was expecting going into him to turn out for him to be like the villain type thing. Judging from the trailer, I was expecting it to be kind of Benicio del Toro gets in with Josh Brolin, and then it turns out that he takes a stand against Josh Brolin, and so it turns out Josh Brolin is the villain. It actually didn't quite go that way. It actually added a lot of sympathy towards both characters who when you watch the first Sicario, you kind of really mistrust in a really big way. So I actually really appreciated it. There was the only thing I would say, it did feel a little bit too much of a two-parter. It was like at the middle film, there was promise of a third film, and I don't know whether a third film is coming. I imagine if they do the third film, I think Taylor Sheridan probably do it himself, because he did Wind River as well, which I recommend doing. But yeah, the only real major criticism of it is that it just felt a bit thin-wise, because it just felt like there was more to the story to happen. But apart from that, in terms of atmosphere and characterization, I had a good time with it. So.
I mean, the first film for me, I can't tell you much about now. And the funny thing is that seems to be a trait of Dennis Villeneuve. I really like him. But if you ask me to sit and describe what happens in his films, I'm struggling a lot of the time afterwards. Always enjoy it in the moment. I think the big plus of Sicario was, it's nothing like this film, but it reminds me of something like Master and Commander, in that when I think of Master and Commander, one of its big pluses is that it makes you really feel what it's like to be in that world. You really feel dropped into that world. And Sicario had that, and because you didn't know who to trust, it was naturally tense. Whatever was happening, and it was morally grey. But in terms of plot details, character details, none of it has really stuck with me. I think I would have loved to have gone back and spent another couple of hours in that world. And it's one of those things that when it drops on streaming services and stuff, I'll watch it immediately. It's one of those that I'm like, fuck. If only, I think I hadn't been, I've had a lot of problem with I mentioned it on a show, I think the other day. I had a lot of problems with my eyes this year. And I had the problem at the start of June and the end of June as well, or beginning of July. And actually, that might have been why I couldn't go the first week. And the second week, it had just gone. And, their businesses, these cinemas, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, And I mean, I remember it from years ago. I went to see, funny enough, Benicio del Toro in that one as well. I went to see part one of Che, the Che Guevara film.
Yeah.
And I was sat in there by myself. And the sequel, the part two, they never even bothered showing. And like, I still don't think I've seen it 10 years on. And they will do that occasionally. And so, yes, Day of the Soldado did not last very long theatrically down here. So hence I didn't see it. It's a regret I didn't.
It's definitely worth a watch when if it pops up on Netflix. Definitely. I mean, it's very much it is a very much more of a moody, atmospheric type sort of thing.
Does it miss Emily Blunt at all? Or did you just not think about it because the characters weren't?
Yeah, I've heard a couple of views that might have said, "Oh, I missed that kind of element in it." I personally didn't, because I think it was just because the way they said it, I think it was like a different film in its own right. It's kind of half true, because it feels too much like a two-parter for that. Or it feels like another segment off, but it didn't feel like the need for it, because like you think of Emily Blunt's character. Emily Blunt's character is more of like an innocent, naive, wide-eyed perspective, which you
can only pull that off once,
which takes you into the film. So the second film, well, you're already here, aren't you?
You don't need it, and not only that, how long is she going to stay wide-eyed and innocent?
Yeah,
so, I get it. I mean, I'm not going to be able to make my own judgment till I see the film, but theoretically, a second film wouldn't necessarily need it.
Yeah, I would. I've heard a few people have a take on that. She will probably make a return if they do a third film. And I think a third film, I would very much like to see a third film, because it would add detriment if this was just it. Because by the time you get to the end, you think, "Oh, is that it?" But having said that where you get to the whole, "Oh, was that it?" You are invested in what's happening. So there is more legs to it, so to say. I mean, you might do a TV series on it. I mean, that might work. But
this strikes me as like a 10-part Netflix series, you know. But then maybe that's because I'm thinking of stuff like Narcos and stuff. I don't know. Yeah. Although I've hardly seen any of Narcos, to be fair. It's just okay.
But that probably speaks to like the quality of the TV nowadays, though, doesn't it? Really, when you start looking at
particularly when you're talking mid-budget, where you can do it on TV, you'd still have, it would be expensive by TV terms because of the location work, but it's completely achievable, and what you do is give it room to breathe.
Yeah.
There's nothing inherently you can't do on a big screen, but you can have 8 to 10 hours of it, or 8 to 13 hours of it, rather than like 2. So I get the logic of something like this. Having said that, we're going to talk about certainly one thing later on where it started life as a TV show, and I think is all the better for being a film. So it doesn't necessarily follow. It does depend what it is, but certainly something like this, where you're dropped very much into the life, or you were in the first Sicario, I think that could work on TV very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You can do a third film and have like your spin-off TV show or whatever. Because you're not like bound by like the big star contracts, are you? You can sort of have your own thing there. But who knows? So Sicario 2, I give a thumbs up, with a hopeful that they do a third film that actually justifies where it ends. But there's
hopefully this side of Christmas I'll be watching it on like the Now app or something.
Oh yeah, it'll definitely be on like Now TV by Christmas.
I mean, some things you can't be bothered one weekend, or you change your mind, or you're like, maybe next week. This one, now I think back on it, it was literally my eyes. I couldn't go 1 week, and then the next week wasn't there. Yeah. So a bit disappointed, but I mean, the only reason we brought it up tonight is we mentioned it in part one. It's not really the most summer of summer films, is it? Apart from being in a very hot, dusty environment, of course. No. Be an odd film to review. It would be an odd film to release in December, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it's one of those films you could release any time of the year, really. I mean, the first Sicario came out like sort of like autumn time, like September, October.
All right. Okay.
So it came out around then, the first one anyway. So I think it was just like finding like a place, and maybe like World Cup gave it a bit of a you can stop. I don't know, but anyway. So our first film is Jurassic World 2: Fallen Kingdom. Have I said that right? Yeah.
Yeah. You go first.
All right, okay.
While I control my laughter.
Okay, well, I'm in two minds about this film. On the one hand, I did enjoy my time with it because it is as a summer blockbuster. You know, you munch away at your popcorn. It did its thing. I liked Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. They were fine leads in the film, and there was some fun to be had. That said, and also it did do some. It did address some interesting takes with the whole like, are dinosaurs now endangered species kind of thing, blah blah blah. But that said, I couldn't help but stop thinking how stupid the whole thing was. like it was one of those things like, I'm having fun, but come on, this is just too silly now. like I wasn't sure whether he was aware of it was this bad, or whether he just knew it was just silly and just go with it, or like I was a bit confused. But go on, what do you think?
I came out and tweeted two things, I think. I said, and I stand by both of them, it is the dumbest A-lister blockbuster I've seen since Batman and Robin. Right? Now, what saves it from that degree of ignominy is they aren't all hammered it up, and they don't realise they're in something that stupid, and also it's not full of neon. I mean, Batman and Robin, you cannot deny what you're watching.
Yeah.
Here, maybe you can switch your brain off, I don't know. And I think the other thing I tweeted was, if they carry on at this rate of trying to up the threat, in the next film, the new dinosaur species will just be a massive ribbed penis. Right? It's just getting such a fucking willy waving competition. I thought this was spectacularly stupid, and I think there were lots of things that, I mean, I could do a show on this no problem without even rewatching the film, because so much was flooding through my mind at the time. It's
definitely a feature do you expect us to talk, isn't it?
It is. I'm dreading doing it though, because I'm a bit of a Jurassic Park detractor, and it's one thing to give an honest opinion.
But it's an early contender for commentary, isn't it? If we're going to do commentary on one.
Jurassic World, without question, of the 5 films, if we did a commentary. But, I mean, the thing with Jurassic Park is I never really liked it. Now, we'll cover that when we get to Do You Expect Us to Talk? And I'm really going to have to decide how vitriolic to be for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's not that bad. It's not one of those that you absolutely destroy. But not only that, Becca loves it, and whilst I have to give an honest opinion, I don't want to humiliate anyone at the same time. But I think it's the most overrated work of Steven Spielberg's career. Was never a fan. But then Jurassic World came out, and I'm in an odd position because it's as corporate and soulless as it comes, but I kind of enjoyed it. So you're left in a position where I don't really like Jurassic Park very much and kind of like Jurassic World, but they're not. That's not a comparable. You know, I'm not comparing one to the other.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Jurassic World's better than Jurassic Park.
Yeah, but if someone asks you what was a better film, you have to say, well, Jurassic Park's a better film, but I enjoy Jurassic World more.
But I'm not really comparing them to each other. Jurassic Park's a film 25 years ago I didn't like. I've tried a few times since and still don't like. Went to see a film called Jurassic World about 3 years ago and thought, yeah, that was quite enjoyable. So I'm not really. But the trouble with this film, the sequel, is it really highlights that there's not. Well, I'm going to contradict this towards the end of what I'm going to say now. But on the face of it, there's not really a series here, and there never fucking was. I mean, they're trying to remake the first one again. You know, it's an elderly, benevolent man whose folly has led to this, who's got people working for him who don't have the best interests of people, the park, the world, his legacy at heart. Well, that's exactly the same as the first one. You know, you've got It
felt like two films as well. It felt, and then like the first part felt like they were just fast forwarding it to get to the second part.
You can see they've brainstormed ideas they don't know what to do with as well, because the whole point is the little girl's actually a clone. She's a clone of what's purported to be her mother, but her mother died. So you've got
she part dino as well, or something like.
James Cromwell's character died. James Cromwell's character's daughter died, and it turned out he just cloned her again, and that's painted as like his grandchild. But they never did anything with that, except at the end where she saves the dinosaurs and say they're just like me, and it's like, well, that's just a fucking line. Come on, where's the thematic weight to any of this? But they've got Rafe Spall in it as like the bad guy, and he might as well have that tattooed on his forehead the moment you see him. Now, pantomime villain's fine, but I think we were meant to be surprised. He's kind of running James Cromwell's estate.
They give it away in the trailer. That's the thing. It's like, okay.
I don't know that I saw a trailer, which is unusual. No, I did, because the bit where she's in bed and that dinosaur's reaching over the bed covers, I did see that, so I must have done. But I didn't really pay any attention, so I went in not knowing, or if I knew, I'd forgotten I knew, but the film, it's just...
It might depend on the trailer. I think there was like one trailer that had,
Everything about it was kind of laughable, right down to what Chris Pratt's doing with himself. You know, like building that house in the middle of fucking nowhere. And Bryce Dallas Howard has gone from a steely-eyed businesswoman to like wanting to save, to
activist.
Fucking Greenpeace, to activist, to actually dumb damsel for the majority of the film. She's not particularly well served by the material here. The child is wasted. I think the child and what she is was meant to be more central to this than it is. When they start selling dinosaurs, the only moving bit is where they leave the island and you've got the dinosaur about to die. And I think a lot of people have laughed at that, but that actually did get me. I was a little bit like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it had moments where you think... It did have moments. Where you think, okay, well, you took the time to kind of think, no, wait, hang on. This is actually kind of sad.
But, they were such pantomime villains. That sort of military guy who's running things, Ted Levine, I think it was, just Buffalo Bill. Mercenary. It's like, that would just... Sorry?
Buffalo Bill, from...
Manhunter.
Silence Lambs.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
His whole death bit was just like, I'm sorry, I'm all for seeing bad guys getting eaten by dinosaurs, but his whole idea, like, I just didn't buy his whole like, oh, I know, I'll just go and just take the tooth off this random dinosaur that I don't know anything about. And it's literally his whole thing was like, I want to get paid. Where's my money? I just like, huh?
Yeah. But, the other thing is they need that fucking raptor from the first film that Chris Pratt had a clearly sort of parental relationship with, if you like. But that was to mix it with the Indominus Rex to create this new species. Again, having to up the threat every fucking time, which is ludicrous. In a minute, we're just going to get a massive bony penis.
It was no different to like the dinosaur that I had last time.
But they didn't have blue. They said here's a specimen, what's the word? A prototype.
Yeah.
They hadn't got blue there yet, so what's it a prototype of?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a splicing of the Indominus Rex and the raptor, and the raptor's not there.
And that whole idea of selling dinosaurs like to arm dealers was just like
to do what with?
I'm not sure what for. And when they sort of like,
I'm just imagining like a bunch of soldiers sat in a plane, getting ready to like fucking Halo jump into somewhere, and sat amongst them this raptor patiently waiting to jump with them. It makes no fucking sense at all.
I'd take that whole aspect out. The whole point. The whole thought of like, I know, let's show a bunch of people some potential merchandise which is not ready at an auction.
Certainly the main event wasn't.
Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that and then be surprised when they start like, no, I want to buy that thing? Like,
well, they show the prototype, which is pointless and doesn't have Blue's DNA in it anyway. But Blue's DNA, as I understand it, was to make the creature more suggestible, trainable, etc. Although later on it shows the same traits that, they point that laser pointer and it can follow it and do what it's told to do. But the whole point is that particular model, treating it in sort of the language of like selling stuff, that particular model, if you like, of dinosaur is going to be suggestible. So there's an idea that you can train it to lead into battle, follow into battle, whatever. None of it makes sense, but fair enough. But what about all the others? These are just fucking mindless creatures. It makes no sense. And the other thing that got pointed out, and I think this may have been the Slash Filmcast, they said that the sums they're selling these things for are actually laughably low. Because out of that sale of like a dozen lots or 11 lots, they reach a grand total of less than the budget of the fucking film. Now, you've got to think they're an endangered species. They've brought back what they could. The rest are dead, and they're prehistoric creatures. This is all you've got left.
I imagine they've taken blood samples and then they can clone them, and then, but then again, I imagine then so would everyone else. I thought it was
spectacularly dumb, and I didn't think the action was particularly good either. I really didn't. I mean, they're fighting on a fucking greenhouse at the end of it. It's just like, oh, this is really poor. It was such a drop away, but mainly because we're watching like a benevolent grandfather figure and people mistreating his legacy and his folly getting the better of him. I'm thinking, this is just trying to remake the first film again. There is no franchise here. Having said that, a bit like when we talked about Tomb Raider earlier in the year, and a bit like Atomic Blonde last year, if they follow up, the third film's got more potential than the second.
See, what's your feeling on the ending of the film? Because again, it was just one of the things were like, oh, you're making like a kind of like a point. You're making like you're at least emphasizing the internal angst of doing it. Because at the end you have like the activist who really wants to free the animals, and then she's put in a position where she can either free them but that means potentially...
Yeah, and you've left an 8-year-old near the button. That probably wasn't your best move.
Like, and the whole thing of like, I'll free... that's a bit of a cop-out when the child does it, takes basically the decision away.
It's almost like they don't trust the audience to trust or to debate intelligently the motivations of the character that does, if it's an adult character. Think about it. There were fucking like Senate hearings and God knows what else on these creatures.
Yeah.
And the ultimate decision that could lead effectively over time to an endangerment of our species was taken by an 8-year-old.
I was just thinking, like, the eternal struggle. She's thinking, like, I could do what I really want and release these creatures, but also that means potentially death of like God knows how many now.
Yeah, it's the
film kind of just brushes over that.
It's the conservationist versus the realist in her. The conservationist wants to press the button. The realist just goes, that's not a sensible way to go.
Yeah, and then that's quite like, that's quite a good struggle to sort of empathise on. But
then she just goes, no, they're just like me.
And it's like, okay, I wonder how many people have died now because of you said you just done
because
that.
of a child. I mean, the thing is,
and also not only that, but how any other creatures, other animals who are now endangered and probably
because
now
their
extinct.
place in the food chain has just been completely fucking rewritten.
Yes.
I mean, I just thought the film was really, really stupid. But worse than that, I was quite bored by a lot of it. Worse than that, the characters were playing what they played last time, but even dumber. Worse than that, they come up with the odd idea like the clone child and do zero with it. They make the villains as cartoonish as humanly possible, and I think you need to build to that, not just have them introduced as. I mean, Rafe Spall's character might as well have been called Mr. Complete Bastard. That might as well. You might as well say.
I was too busy thinking like, why is Rafe Spall doing an American accent? Because that always gets me in these films. Like,
there's nothing about the character that has to be American.
Yeah, I mean, I understand if it's like you get a Brit character and you're playing someone who is, let's say, sort of like Spider-Man. Obviously, he has to be from.
But Henry Cavill has to play Superman with American accent. Yeah. He's brought up in Kansas.
Yeah, kind of thing. But when it's just like, fresh new character, or say like someone in the military or like a police officer, you expect them to start like, But when it's sort of like, I'm a businessman. Well, can you not be a businessman from Britain?
His accent wasn't good either. And I'm sat there watching him do this like not very good accent, playing like a slim, reasonably good-looking businessman. And all I can think of is the fat kid going, "You got red on you." You know what I mean? Because he was in Shaun of the Dead as a minor character. He lost a lot of weight between that and Hot Fuzz, and he played one of the cops in Hot Fuzz. Well, they were all cops, but one of the CID guys, the plain policemen.
The two Andys.
But yeah, the two Andys. That's it. thought it was a massive step down from last time. Now, and I also appreciate these films are going to do what they can to promote themselves, but frankly, Jeff Goldblum, why? Is it because the only thematic weight this series has ever carried is Jeff Goldblum's speech from the first 20 minutes of the first film? You know, you're thinking about whether you could, you weren't thinking about whether you should. So they brought him back to do a little bit of a flavour of that almost.
All of life finds a way.
But it is like it could lead to the endangerment of our species. You know, welcome to Jurassic World. But the last line of the film, it was in the fucking trailer.
Which I could instantly see. I was like, yeah, I reckon that's like the last thing.
I was like, yeah, and then I heard rumours he wasn't in it as much as you might think, although I didn't think he was in it very much. I did think it was going to be a bit like...
all his shots were actually in that courtroom. Yeah, thinking like, that's going to be his one scene.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a bit like Darth Vader in Episode 3. We'd get maybe 3 minutes of him. To be honest, I don't think we got much more than a minute. I don't know, because I haven't seen it for a few months, but it was skinny even by what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I was expecting him to be reasonably dominant in one scene. But actually, it was a couple of cutaways to this court, really. I've never really liked this series very much, but Jurassic World was like enjoyable enough. I thought this was absolutely miserable, and it was really, really stupid as well. And where else? You've got nowhere else to go with this except where they have gone, bizarrely, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you've got nowhere else to go with, let's splice a new fucking variant. Let's have some new benevolent grandfather. It's just, you're done. You haven't got a lot left. So all you can do at this stage is release them out in the world and have like a Planet of the Apes type scenario, albeit with dinosaurs. And that's about all they've got left to do, and that's their only shot.
Like an alternate future where like everything's all...
well, all I mean is, if you think about it, in Planet of the Apes, or I'm talking about the newer series, not the classic films, there's relatively few apes affected by this virus early on. But they're helped along by the fact that humanity is being wiped out by a virus that's actually, it turns out, enhancing them. Well, you don't have that levelling the playing field, but obviously several species of dinosaurs are that much more deadly than a primate. So I guess you could have something like that. It will be Colin Trevorrow back for it. I'm not necessarily that sold on him as a filmmaker, but certainly Jurassic World was an awful lot better than this. So I'd rather this than Bayona. I'm just looking at Bayona's filmography to see if there was anything of his I particularly liked.
The Orphanage, The Impossible?
Yeah. Hasn't done as much as I thought he'd done, actually. But, this was probably... relative to expectations, when you go in and watch something like Skyscraper, which we'll talk about later, in the Meg, they are resolutely B movies. This is like one of the A-list films coming out, you know. So your expectations should be a bit more than this. It was fucking dumb, and I really didn't like it.
Okay. Well, you know, I say I'm a bit torn of it because I did enjoy my time with it, and I was like. And I kept meaning to return to it just to make sure whether it was just me being in a good mood, or you know, but you know, whatever. It had its moments. So
I was happy. You won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, it had its moments, but at the same time, I couldn't help but just notice its big gaping flaws and think, well, that's a big loss of opportunity. But then again, whatever. I was never that dead set on the series anyway.
But, you know, I wasn't. That's the thing. I think you got to be... I think you kind of just about fall into the age category that I'd have expected you to be into it. Because when Jurassic Park came out, I was just at that point where I was getting a bit pretentious about films, as you do in your mid-teens, 16, 17. And that was a particularly fertile time for indie film as well. And Jurassic Park looked so fucking... Dayglow. So
Jurassic Park was like huge at the time. It was like,
and it was a big advert for itself as well. You know, and all the lunchboxes stuff. And I just thought all the interesting stuff in that film's in the first half an hour. Then they bizarrely decide to fucking sideline Jeff Goldblum, who's the only interesting character in the film. You've then got a couple of leads who have zero chemistry with each other, Sam Neill and Laura Dern. Their whole characterization is he's not that comfortable with kids. And it's just, I've never given a shit about that film. And when you think about, yes, it feels very Spielberg, but it's the same guy who did Raiders and stuff like that. It's nowhere near his best work. But if you love it, you love it. Great, no problem. But what I'm saying is, it does colour me slightly, because I don't know why we're still watching Jurassic Park films 25 years later. I didn't think the first one was that great. We're on 5 films now where you might have just about got 2 out of it. Maybe 3. You know, I can imagine you do that sort of reboot qual, as they called it, where like 20 years later you go back with some of the same characters. I can see how you get from like the first one to like a Jurassic World, and I can sort of see how you get to the one that we think is going to come next. But that's 3 films, not the 6 we're going to have by that point.
Oh, there is a big drop in the film after the first film. Is like the quality does just like drop significantly, even from like with the Spielberg sequel.
Even with Spielberg involved, yeah.
Mm.
I didn't get through all of 2 because I thought it was miserable. I hated it.
Yeah.
It's not my series. I accept it's not my series. One day on Do You Expect Us to Talk, I'll explain why, and I'll try to be reasonable, and I'll also watch it with a good heart and a fresh go at it. But for all of that, Jurassic World I took on its terms as like an entertaining ride, and as a sequel to that, this is terrible, let alone Jurassic Park. But there you go.
So there you are. Thumbs down for Jurassic World. Yeah,
definitely. Quite a strong thumbs down from me.
Oh.
Ocean's 8 next.
Ocean's 8. So what do you make of Ocean's 8? Were you a fan of the Ocean films previously?
I really, really liked Ocean's 11. It was smart and it was funny and it had a feel to it. It had a really good sort of soundtrack / score, because there was a bit of swing in it and a bit of Elvis in it and a bit of original score as well. And it just caught an era, you know. Even like Lennox Lewis was like cameoing in it and stuff, and I really liked it. And the plot's really smart as well. I mean, it is. There's one big plot hole in it, and it is to do with the flyers, how they got the flyers into that van and all the rest of it. There's one bit that doesn't make sense, and when it was pointed out to the writers, they went, "Yeah, you're right. Shit." They hadn't even noticed. But it's really smart all the way through, and you can actually sort of get behind the mechanics of what they're doing, and then you see things from a different angle. And they mixed and matched the characters very well as well. You know, I thought, you know, obviously you got the 2 main leads, but then you've got I'm trying to think who was in it now.
You got Clooney, Pitt, Damon,
Carl Reiner, that was it. Carl Reiner's 96 now, but obviously he was in his late 70s when we did this. They just mixed and matched the characters very well, and they got around the different locations very well, and there was a brass neck to what they were doing. I really, really enjoyed it. Then they went and made Ocean's 12, and on paper, I was quite intrigued by it, because they announced it was going to be filmed in and around Europe and Lake. I always get Como and Garda mixed up. I think it's Lake Como. Clooney has a home. So I thought it's going to have some beautiful locations, and they were going to add what's she called? Mrs. fucking Douglas.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
That's it. Yeah, the least likable actress of all time. As a screen presence, I mean, she might be lovely, but as a screen presence, I've never found her likable in anything. But they cast her as an Interpol agent, I think it was, and they said Vincent Cassel, and I thought, sold. This is going to be really good. And you know, Benedict will want revenge and all the rest of it. And it was the most self-indulgent bullshit in the world. It was a bit like the original Ocean's 11, in that a group of mates just turned up and just pissed about and did a film while they were doing it. It was almost like they enjoyed it so much they just wanted to go on holiday together. And they shot a film while they were doing it. So Ocean's 12 is a bad film, and every now and again I revisit it, because I always think I'm going to like it this time. Vincent Cassel, Europe, you know, a bit of an interesting take on what they did last time, but there's nothing overly smart about it. Ocean's 13, I remember being a lot better, but I've only seen it once or twice. Saw it when it was released, and I think I saw it on home release once, and it was more in line with the quality of the first one, but it lacks the surprise factor. It's not quite as smart, but it was pretty decent. And actually, with that in mind, I think this was kind of in line with that quality. Quality-wise, this was kind of Ocean's 13. It wasn't an Ocean's 11, but it really wasn't an Ocean's 12, thankfully. I liked the casting of it. I thought everyone in it was really, really good. But I didn't find what they were doing as interesting or as smart. And whereas, before we would see things from different angles and you'd go, that was what was happening. And a bit Logan Lucky was a bit like that as well, Steven Soderbergh's film from last year. With this film, they threw in a whole new layer of, we stole all that as well. And it was that character from the first film. It's like, so largely, if you ask me to describe like key set pieces now and bits from it I thought were like clever or smart, I think I'd struggle a little bit, but I enjoyed it at the time. What about you?
Well, for a bit of context, I've only seen Ocean's 13. I haven't seen Ocean's 11. I've not seen Ocean's 12, so I can't say I'm a fan of the series. I think I've seen Ocean's 13 once.
You'll always get counter views, but it's pretty. It's overwhelmingly that 11's really good, 12's really not, and 13's okay.
Yeah.
So you've missed the good one, really.
That's what I expect. But then again, part of me thinks I don't think it's a series that plays to me anyway. But I can't say I've seen the best one.
You wildly like Logan Lucky, and Logan Lucky is like a hick version of it.
Well, yeah, I can imagine that's kind of the way. But anyway, Ocean's 8. I think when it started out, I thought, okay, this is okay, this is fine. It's very stylish, very smooth. Sandra Bullock's always a great screen presence. And I think I found as the film just progressed more and more, the more I just actively disliked it. It wasn't so much the idea, it was just how it just overcomplicated itself. Particularly at the last end, I was just like, oh my god, will you just end? Like, what is the point of like adding this whole extra heisting on top of the heist? You
didn't need it at all.
Like, as soon as James Corden shows up, and I'm not saying this is a knock on James Corden, I know that's usually like a dig.
No, I'm not going to go down that path because it's too easy.
But it's not actually.
Okay.
But it's actually not. I mean, to be fair, he's probably like one of the most interesting characters in the whole thing. But I was like thinking, I wish.
He plays it with quite a nice heart. He's all right.
Yeah, I mean, but there's something about that makes you think. Actually, no, there's something of interest about that kind of character who's like almost like who plays kind of. He's actually smarter than what he makes out to be. But I just found like the whole thing was just like, oh my god, this just. I'm struggling to think because I can't remember that much about it now, but I remember actually thinking, oh my god, will you just fucking end already? You're going on top of it. You literally sort of like to justify yourself with like, no, this needs to be tighter. This needs like what are you doing?
It's almost like they didn't think they had enough running time because I'm looking at it now and it ran for 110 minutes, which is not a long film. Not considering it's not a straight comedy, you'd probably expect it to come in around there. And they've had to pad it slightly to get it there. I think they had a concept. It's not a concept I have a problem with, that it's all women and all the rest. I didn't have a problem with that because that gives it a different dynamic, and I quite like that in this regard. And actually, Sandra Bullock's really great in it. She's really great as a straight actress, a comedic actress, but also like a grifter. She's really good at it. Kate Blanchett was okay. Anne Hathaway is just rangy as hell. She can play everything from genius to dumb as fuck and has perfect comic timing and does most of that in this film. Sarah Paulson trying to play the suburban sort of mom, but, she's not. And, even things I thought might, when you put non-actors in a film like Rihanna, I thought that was going to be awful, but she was okay. Helena Bonham Carter tends to play very big these days, and she did here, but she was okay. James Corden always plays James Corden. I don't particularly dislike James Corden or like him, really. He's all right. I thought at one time he was going to have like Ricky Gervais's career, and he hasn't quite. He's had a very different career, and not all of it do I like, but he's fine. Loads of like decent cameos in it, you know, from the famous people from all lines of sort of sport and sort of just general celebrity and actors and actresses. But I don't think they had the plot to go with it. I think they just had, right, we got to have them steal something. So they hit on a location event and maybe the odd wrinkle in the story. And that was about it. I could sit and describe to you what happened in Ocean's 11 in more depth, and I haven't seen it for at least a decade. I could sit here and say, well, at the start of Ocean's 11, very like this film, he's at a parole hearing. He comes out, he immediately speaks to his parole officer, who says, don't leave the state. Then he goes and meets Rusty, the Brad Pitt character, and then, you know, and so on. And I could go on from them, and I can tell you about most of their meetings as the group met. Right, at that point they meet Scott Kahn, and he's doing that with his brother or mate or whichever he is, and then this is happening, and then I could tell you what happens, what the plan is, and how they do. And I'd get lots of it wrong, but I'd get more of it right. I've seen this film in the last couple of months, and I can't tell you very much about it, but it was enjoyable at the time.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I wouldn't say. Well, I actually did dislike it by the end, but it was just a bit of a progression thing, because by the time the film started, I was fine with it, and then I was like, okay, well, you know, this is like kind of slick. And to be honest, I think it's more of a case of the type of film it is. I mean, I get the impression, because I haven't seen the original, but the original films,
by the original we mean,
are kind of they're kind of similar in that sense. So I don't know whether I don't know whether it's more of a case of the fact that I just don't like these type of films. So I fully take on board that might have more of an impact on my opinion of it, because the quality on screen, because it looks nice, and I do more or less like the cast, particularly Sandra Bullock.
She's great at this.
Yeah, and it's why she's perfect casting. If you're going to say, like, if you're going to do like a female equivalent of Danny Ocean, who do you pick? Sandra Bullock, perfect casting. Yeah. So it was all that was fine.
I'd watch another one, but it needs better writing than this.
Yeah, by the time they did the original, I mean, it was going to steal the jury, and I don't think I was quite convinced of the plan, so to speak. But okay, fine. And I was just waiting. By that time, I was just like, okay, well, this isn't actually getting towards the end, and it kept on going. And I thought, why are you continuing on this? This seems just a bit pointless. And it was just like as a twist, and halfway figured it out, and now she's like one of the members. I was like, okay, why?
Because you're getting ready for Ocean's 9.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Ocean's 9, then Ocean's 10, then Ocean's.
And then that will be it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think of that. But yeah, no, I generally
That's
thought...
why they've dropped it to 8, leave enough room for a trilogy. What are you going to do? Go in the other direction and just have to have ridiculously big casts every time?
Yeah, I just thought of that. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. But anyway,
I enjoyed it. I mean, I did enjoy it. Well, I walked out and my first thoughts were not as sharply written as like an Ocean's 11. I won't remember this in a week. I'll remember bits. I'll remember what they were trying to steal. And I'll remember like the glasses where they were trying to get like a copy of it to build it in a 3D printer. I'll remember bits, but like I say, Ocean's 11 came out in 2001. I reckon I last saw it in the build-up to Ocean's 13, which came out in 2007. We're sat here 11 years later, and I reckon I could do a better plot synopsis for that film.
Yeah.
So that says everything I really need to say about it. But with this cast... If they want to come back and do another one, great, because I kind of like caper and heist films.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in terms of the problem of this film. It is largely script based, and that's what I largely took issue with. Was what was like how the story was laid out. It just felt sort of just dragged on too long for no real good reason, and just like I think I've just lost interest progressively as the film went on. Anyway.
Too long, but not too long. You need a film that runs about this length, because it would be very thin at 80 to 90 minutes. But unfortunately, they've had to force it. I'm just trying to look who screenplay was by Gary Ross with someone else. Gary Ross directed this. And actually, as I look back through his filmography, it's a little patchy. He did Pleasantville, which was really good, but he also did Seabiscuit, which was fucking interminable.
I haven't seen Seabiscuit.
Yeah, don't bother.
I know it's like a film with like the horsey film.
It just goes on forever, and it's really twee. But it's sort of a qualified thumbs up. It was okay. It was okay, and it did 4 times its budget, which is probably enough to get it a sequel.
Yeah,
I would think.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where the demand lies for it, because you never know with these things, do you? But anyway. So, what was next on the film? On the
Incredibles 2.
Was it Incredibles 2? Jesus Christ. Okay, so what do you make of Incredibles 2?
Well, I had to go back. I kept intending to watch The Incredibles before I went, and then I sort of forgot. And I don't know how I forgot. I knew I was going to see this Pixar film that's a sequel. And yet I got there and I'm sat there and I'm sat waiting for the film to start and thinking, oh shit, I didn't think to watch the first one, did I? I watched it today, actually. I watched The Incredibles today because there was a period where Pixar were what Marvel is now, in that they were just... no one could believe the hit rate. Everything that came out got really incredible reviews. More so, no pun intended, even more so than Marvel, in that all of their films were getting in the high 90s on like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. Or certainly from high 80s up. And certainly when something like a Toy Story came out, if someone didn't like it, they would be almost called out on it. Mind you, it did tend to be wankers like Armand White. But,
I don't even know who that is.
A real contrarian in the film reviewing industry, but you've only got to go and read some of his stuff, and he's trolling the world.
I'm gonna look him up now.
Armand White, yeah, he's a dickhead. But anyway, he said some really odd things over the years about different things. I mean, he thought Transformers 2 was a masterpiece, and then slaughtered Toy Story 3. For example, and anyway, that's enough on that. The point is, there was a period of time where everything was very, very lauded, and this was right at the apex of that. It was pre-Marvel. It was this was the year Spider-Man 2 came out, so superhero films were becoming a thing, but there were an awful lot more of them in the future than behind them, if you like, by that stage. So The Incredibles was like getting a big screen superhero film when there was relatively a dearth compared to what we get now. And we'd had Finding Nemo the year before, which had done something like 800 odd million at the worldwide box office, which was just like everyone's jaws dropped at that. No one could believe, it had done that much. And The Incredibles came out to just unbelievable praise, just uniformly. Look how well they've animated people. And it's like, well, yeah, but they're not photorealistic, are they? I've never got that. And I went to see it, and I think we talked about this when we talked about Cars 3 last year, which I did think was a poor film, by the way. My perception of the average standard of a Pixar film and where some of these lauded and less lauded ones fall is they're all a lot closer together than is often said. Now, something like The Good Dinosaur I thought was terrible. I thought that was a genuinely poor film, and I think that was because they had to sort of redo it late. I thought Brave was okay, for example. But, something like Cars, the first one particularly, has often had a hard time, and yet I think it's very in line with the average standard of a Pixar film. It's not as good as some, but there are some, and I felt the same, it's like Up is a lot better than the average standard, but I felt the same way about Wall-E. Wall-E's one that's lauded, but actually kind of fails its core audience. And The Incredibles fell into that category for me, that I enjoyed it just fine, but I went to see a film that I thought was okay, very Pixar, and then I came out to just hearing all these reviews of people masturbating themselves silly over it. And I never really understood why. And I rewatched one today and got fucking bored with it, if I'm honest. I don't actually love the first one. I think it's good. I think it's a decent Pixar film. Incredibles 2 fucking blew me away. I thought this absolutely pissed on the first one. And there aren't many reviews saying that, so I suspect it's just me. But I thought it was just paced so much better. It got hold of us and didn't let us go, and it was funny. I mean, the first film had so much of like Mr. Incredible just fucking moping, and when he does get to like Syndrome's like lair in Ireland at the end, that bit goes on forever. This film is paced so much better. I laughed consistently all the way through, and it reminded me very much of the Brad Bird that made Ghost Protocol, in that very like a film we're going to discuss later, which wasn't made by him, but from the same series. They're films that just know how to space out their action and just continually build, and you almost forget to like breathe sometimes. And to do that in animation is absolutely terrific. I have to say, I loved this. I thought it was superb.
I can't remember too much. Well, I've not seen Incredibles 1 for a good while, though I do remember really, really enjoying it. It had a really kind of fun aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I also really liked the family dynamic. I think by the time you get to like
I liked it. I do want to clarify. I liked it, but I only liked it.
Yeah, I think what I really liked was like how like by the end of the film you had like the family working as a team, and there was different aspects of it, And I think even down to like with the which the daughter, what's her name?
I've totally forgotten, having watched the film earlier.
Violet, or like the one with the foot, where she has like difficulties like coming to terms with her powers and that, but like at the even like at the very end where she comes through at the end, it's like she's like good girl. I think that kind of just works beautifully for me.
Yeah. So problems with the first one are largely pacing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't really have much to even agree or disagree with you because I can't really remember that much.
I watched it again today. Maybe it's because I watched it straight after another part 1 to a part 2 we're going to watch. Yeah. So it's my second film of the day. I'm still having problems with my eye, so I was ready to like stop watching stuff. But I watched it again today, and all of the sort of humour and touches are there, although they're ramped up in the second one. Because I walked out of the second one and said to my friend, I said, was the 60s aesthetic as writ large in the first one? He said, oh, yeah. And I was watching it today, and I'm thinking, no, it's accentuated more in the sequel. It is. But yeah,
I did wonder that. Is it deliberately set? It's not set in the 60s, but it's just an aesthetic, isn't it?
I don't know, because they do use sort of portable or mobile phones, don't they? But
I can't remember.
It's got a 60s aesthetic, and it's very... And it, in some respect, funnily enough, when they were given that house to live in the second one, even though it's got no futuristic touches, it reminded me of the Jetsons. I know the Jetsons is a 60s take on the future anyway. So I really liked it. There wasn't the sort of moping you had in the first one. And as I say, he was too long in that lair in the first one. I watched it again today, like I say, and the pacing's not quite right for me. But every scene they just landed here. I just thought it was outstanding. All the humour around that guy, kid Violet likes, and him going to dinner and trying to put it right.
And they men and blacked him. And...
Yeah, and all of that. And I'd forgotten who those people were. I had to go. I've picked it up today, and you even get that boy noticing her at the end of the first one. I do actually. The films fit together quite well. The only problem is obviously animation has moved on a lot. Bob is nowhere near as well animated in the first film, particularly. Dashiell's hair and things like that. But there are most of the differences are minor in that. Elastigirl looks very similar in both films, but I just thought the action was much better. The pacing was better in that there were no parts of the film where I was thinking, come on, whereas in the first one there were. But there's an action sequence with Elastigirl on a bike and stuff, and I'm just thinking, this is a really, really good action director. I'm not surprised he did a Mission Impossible film. Absolutely terrific all the way through. I had a great time with it. Very different beast from the other Pixar film this year, because obviously we had Coco, and I thought Coco was like the best Pixar film for years, actually.
I think I said in the last part 1 review that probably should have won Best Picture out of all the fucking...
Yeah, I remember Charlie Brigden, who obviously podcasts with us sometimes on Do You Expect Us to Talk, particularly music episodes, but he joins us for the odd series. He actually tweeted that it was a film that he felt almost privileged to have seen. He said that happens once so rarely that you see a film and you think that was a privilege, I got to see that. And that's what he said about Coco. For artistic purity, Coco is a better film, but for a piece of
It's
I
same.
suppose you could split it that way. This is like the Pixar summer film. Coco was Pixar's Oscar film, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I had a wonderful time with this. I'd recommend it to anyone. And this is Pixar's best year for a very, very long time. Very long time. They've really got to struggle to live up to this, because I think they've got Toy Story 4 next year.
Which I kind of don't want them to do, because
I don't want them to
the last one ended so perfectly. I don't want it to ruin it now.
I didn't want them to do 3, but then the ending of that, I sat next to my then dying father and we sobbed, because the end of that film's all about the passage of time, isn't it? And I've got my father next to me who has like months to live. It's a very special film. I still think Toy Story 2 is a better film, by the way, but the ending of that film was just unbelievable. And actually, when I say best Pixar film in years about Coco, it's the only film that's landed an ending like that in quite the same way. That and Up, really, of the whole of the Pixar canon. I really, really outstanding. But this was really great, and I just... Yeah, this was it, broadening it out and almost being ready to franchise it if they want. But I mean, Bob Odenkirk in it as well. I struggled for ages, all the way through. I'm trying to place that voice, Winston Diva, the fan who ran the communications, and I thought he was going to turn out to be the bad guy. And I thought, what about?
No, I knew instantly it was going to be the sister.
But yes, I did, in terms of I've seen films, but there was something in his voice that I thought, what is it about this guy that's suggesting slippery character? Of course, I looked it up. It's Bob Odenkirk, Saul Goodman from fucking Breaking Bad. And I thought, well, that's probably deliberate. And he was really, really good in it. I've always loved Catherine Keener as an actress anyway. I just had a really, really great time with it. I'm running out of ways to keep saying the same thing, so maybe we move on. But I thought it was super.
I enjoyed the expanding of the different superheroes, and then having them being like essentially other henchmen, even though they're like there's plot devices that make them kind of turn rather than.
And it was also inclusive as well. It was very 2018 that way. You've got a medical problem, we can make a superpower out of it. But Pixar had a hell of a run, probably through to about, I don't know when you would go through to, possibly 2010, possibly through to then. But I mean, the initial run in terms of universal praise was probably broken by Cars. Mm-hmm. So certainly through to this film. It was just one of those things that critics were falling over themselves to laud the next film as the greatest that they've made so far. Bit like Marvel is now. When a new one comes out, they go, it's probably the best Marvel film, isn't it? But it was critically led in a way that Marvel hasn't been. Although critically, they're very popular. But it's been patchier over the last few years. They do more sequels now. This obviously is a sequel as well. And really, Inside Out was the first sign they were sort of getting it back together a couple of years ago. But yeah, what a year they've had this year.
What's next on Pixar?
I think Toy Story. I think what they're basically, I think their motto is like a film and a half a year, and what that means is one film 1 year, and then 2 the next. And when they have 2, they're looking to make it one original property and a sequel. So they will always have some churn of new material, but they will sequelize, which I think they will look down. People look down their nose at it, and they said, "Oh, you've had this run of doing wonderful, incredible, new original properties, and now you're sequelizing." It's like, yeah, but they're a studio like any other. They need sure things like any other, and obviously their take is going to be somewhat unpredictable. Because this has done 1.1 billion. And I don't know what Coco did, but I can guarantee it won't be that high. So I can understand them going to sure things. What was Lee? What's he called? Lee? Oh no, Pete Docter, I think it was. One of them, or was it Lee Unkrich? One of their main directors has tweeted the other day that they've now locked what his film will be for 2021, and he's really excited, but he can't say what it is yet, and so on. So they obviously do plan down the pipe. They have to. But yeah, I thought
it takes a while, doesn't it, to set up? Yeah.
The look and feel of this film was incredible. The again, no pun intended. The Giacchino score was great. I like this more than the first film. I can't, and having rewatched the first film today, I'm very, very sure of that.
So it's a lot more about pacing for like in
I
this
think
section.
so. I think so because a superhero becoming like a bored house husband in a dead end job is a funny joke, but they belaboured it way too long in the first film, and then he's caught by, like I say, syndrome, and that seems to go on forever. This film just keeps moving. It's really great, and of course we're now much more interested in the kids, and that would normally be death of a film to me. But watching Violet fucking struggle with it was actually really well done. And
It's kind of similar that, don't they? Because they kind of have like, you know, the parents kind of always get split off, and then you have like the kids do their own thing. So each film does do that, don't they?
It was quite funny trying to watch him babysit as well. You know, again, it's quite a hackneyed type of humour, but it was so well done. And then eventually he's fallen asleep trying to read the story. And it's all pretty well done. But,
and the baby's like knocking him, like.
Yeah, but mainly pacing, and I think Brad Bird is a very, very special action director as a result. And you know, he's got another almost string to his bow, having done a Mission Impossible film, because it's paced a lot more like something like that.
But, yeah, I'll be interested to see what he does next then. If he does another live action, preferably something a bit more action based, but.
I don't know what his next plan is, because obviously he did Tomorrowland, which was not good.
I didn't hate it, but I think it didn't land as well.
Visually, it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very good visual director, but when you marry that to pacing, I mean, it's obviously a pretty decent school, Pixar, because they turn out some good filmmakers. Yeah. But I was skeptical when they came back to it, because I just thought overrated and underrated are terms that some people don't like, and I get all that. But you know, in my understanding of it, The Incredibles is probably Pixar's most overrated film in my eyes, probably up there with WALL-E. And it's not to say either of those films are anything less than terrific. It's to do with the fact that they're held up as like gold standards. And I thought Finding Nemo was a better film than The Incredibles. I think I probably preferred Ratatouille as well, if I'm honest. And WALL-E, my biggest problem with WALL-E is it's aimed at me and you. It's not aimed at children. And there's nothing wrong with layering it towards us, but it is an animated film at the end of the day from a studio that they aren't Studio Ghibli. They aren't they aren't any number of content providers I probably know very little about that are putting content out that may be animated but isn't particularly for kids. You can't say Pixar isn't. It is. And WALL-E bored children in my screening. The Incredibles seems to be uniformly loved, so maybe it's just me.
I think it's more of a, I think The Incredibles is a good crowd pleaser.
I just remember being slightly underwhelmed by it. That's all. I went in with massively high hopes and just came out going, well, it's a Pixar film, but it ain't bad.
Yeah.
The sequel, I went in going, and I was hearing not quite as good as the first one, but good. And I thought, well, I'll take that. That's fine. And I came out just thinking, that's so much better. It lacks the originality, but it's so much better. For me.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult for me to compare because I'm not seeing the original for a good while. I think I'll agree with you in terms of it probably is better paced, but I do prefer the ending. But as a kind of as a trade off, but that's me going off the top of my head rather than like any recent viewings. So Incredibles 2. So, oddly, I saw this film before Incredibles 2. Skyscraper. Is that the next film?
Take it away then, buddy. Yeah, take it away. It's what I've got.
I don't think there's much to say about it, really, other than...
We could be quite quick with this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically Die Hard and Towering Inferno, even though Towering Inferno was basically...
Finally, they've hit upon we've had Die Hard on a boat, we've had Die Hard on a mountain. Finally, they've gone with Die Hard in a skyscraper. Why did they never think of that before?
Yes, but did we have it starring The Rock before?
No. We had it starring the fucking cock.
Look, I think this film was just fine. I'll be honest. I was expecting to have more fun with it than I actually did, but then I still had fun with it. I think it's very throwaway, but I think at the very least it knows what it is. It doesn't sort of pretend that it's like, oh well, weird. This is high art drama here. It knows, look, it's just a dumb movie. Rock's going to do his thing. He's going to gaffer tape himself up, make a few gags about it. I liked Rock anyway, no matter what. It was nice to see Nev Campbell back. It was nice to actually see the female role not be like sidelined anyway. She was very much involved in what was going on. I think going away from it, the things I liked about it the most was it actually portrayed them as a family, and not just as a family, but as a team. They were actually, she would do her thing once they got out of the building, and she'd still be like an asset to not only to Dwayne Johnson's character, but also to the plot as well. She wasn't just like sidelined.
It's a marriage of equals.
Yeah,
it is. It is. They have different skill sets to each other, but it's a marriage of equals. She saves his life before the main plot.
And from that aspect, I really appreciated. I really liked that. It did. Yeah, it was absolutely fine. It had a few nice set pieces, and I watched it. I was entertained. I walked away, and I quickly forgot about it. But there we are. So, what do you make of it?
I couldn't believe. I saw the name kept sticking in my mind. I kept seeing directed Rawson Marshall Thurber, and I was going, I know that name. Why is that name not coming to me? And I look it up, and it's the director of Dodgeball, We're the Millers, and Central Intelligence.
Yep.
And it's the strangest. It's the strangest. There's a compliment in this, I guess, in that it's the strangest directorial appointment since they put the Russos on The Winter Soldier.
It's good to see that someone like him who's used to do a certain type of comedy is stretching himself. It's like, no, I'm going to do like a big action film.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the Russos did something like You, Me, and Dupree.
Yeah.
And not only was that comedy, not only was that in line with like perhaps a Dodgeball or a We're the Millers, but it was actually a poor comedy as well. At least Dodgeball was really fucking funny. It's not aged as well as, say, because it came out around the same time as Anchorman. And when they came out, they were kind of seen as vaguely sort of similar standard. All these years on, Anchorman is like an enduring classic of that sort of type of film, and Dodgeball less so. But Dodgeball was really funny. Central Intelligence was a surprise because I wasn't expecting to like that. And I laughed all the way through it quite heartily, kind of enjoyed it. So I went into this, but again, the Russos were giving The Winter Soldier, and they keep knocking it out of the park. So no problem with it. I was just
to be fair on that comparison.
What exec meeting was it that said, "Well, let's have him do it"?
I mean, yeah. To be honest, it does make me wonder whether it's because, to be fair to the comparison, there is a heft to having Marvel like production. There is like you have that backing, so there is certain elements to that. And also, you don't know what the Russos have done, like behind. They could be like, we've only seen like what they've done, but they've probably done like work or
pitches
that kind of thing. But anyway.
This is not as, this is half the budget of those types of films, though, because we're looking at around the 125 million mark, which is, weighty enough, but for a modern action film, that's getting into sort of B-movie territory. And in fact, the other notable B-movie we're going to cover's got a very similar budget. So, yeah, and a very similar box office as well, looking at it. So I guess it's not as big a risk that, you're not giving him the Fast franchise. You're giving him this. So I think you said one thing that really sort of, I thought, he's right there. I was expecting to have more fun with it. I was expecting it to be a bit more knowingly B-movie, and it's not. It's taken itself very seriously. It's all my daughter, my daughter, my daughter, which is kind of a cliche of in itself now of the sort of action genre. These big burly men, beguiled by having to save their daughters. It's always the daughters. He's got two kids, but they get the son out and the daughter's still in trouble. So there's a lot of that. You're right on Nev Campbell. They don't have any notable chemistry between them, particularly, but that doesn't matter. They're separated for the vast majority of the film. She saves his life. We start off with an incident from a number of years before where he doesn't spot kind of like a bomb on someone, like a suicide bomber type thing, where they've got it on their chest. So he gets badly hurt, loses a leg in it, but she's the surgeon that saves him. So she has a degree of military training, although she went into medicine rather than fighting, but she will have done basic training and so on.
She's of that world.
She's of that world. She's not particularly fazed by what he's done in his life. He's a security consultant for basically a CGI skyscraper, one that doesn't really exist, a big sort of park in the middle of it. It's one of these things that's still like in the dreams of some architects somewhere. The guy who's building it is the bad guy from The Dark Knight, basically. Not the Joker, obviously, but the guy at the start of the film. The
very good calculation.
That's the one. Chris Hahn looking at it. Or Chin Hahn, sorry. My eyes are still playing me up, sorry. There were no real surprises in the film. I wasn't surprised when he was betrayed by an old friend, much like the last film we're going to cover tonight. I didn't find it overly thrilling. I thought the stakes were too low. The problem is that they're personal to him, but it's one woman and two kids, and after a period of time, one of the kids is out as well. So he's really trying to save two people, which can work, but when all of the marketing for this film is this big skyscraper, you're expecting the Towering Inferno, the Poseidon adventure, where there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people at risk. This is much more about a personal challenge to a man, because obviously he's missing part of a leg as well. And there was a lot of fatuous complaining about how they should have used a real amputee for it. Well, I can't name
how many NTVs can you get to sell a film?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be someone who can sell the fucking thing, yeah. I'm not anti the idea, but just who?
Yeah.
At the moment,
and you got to start from somewhere. If you're going to...
Oscar Pistorius is not available. Some of the stunts were pretty good. Some of it was a bit dumb. That big room at the end, that was so easily trailed by the start of the film that they're going to be in this sort of almost virtual reality where you don't know who's where. A bit like the end of Superman 2, the theatrical cut where copies of him keep appearing. The only thing, that's a definite cheat as well, because where he says, "I'm behind you," nothing in the scene supports that being the case. They've just thrown that in at the last minute. It's not as fun as I would like. The stakes aren't as high as I would like. But, I mean, he's never less than watchable, is he, Dwayne Johnson?
No.
You would expect him as an ex-wrestler to do a lot of B-movie direct, but actually he kind of skirts between A and B list, really. So a bit like a Jason Statham, you're not necessarily guaranteed quality when you go, but you're guaranteed a pretty engaging performance. And it's fine. It's okay. But yeah, I would have liked it to have either been better or more knowingly fun.
Yeah. But fine. Absolutely fine. So, So the next film would have been Mamma Mia, but, we neither saw that because...
Because we're heterosexual men.
Basically, yeah.
Yes. I have seen the first one, but I don't know how. I certainly didn't see it theatrically. But
I haven't seen the first one, so
I think I had to see it for Brosnan singing as much as anything else. As a Bond fan, you got to know. But I mean, you could just YouTube that clip now.
Do you do his pain face in it?
No, I don't know. He does his pain face in every scene, really, doesn't he?
Or was that the audience as he was singing?
You don't do that when he's singing. It actually... The biggest thing I can say about Brosnan singing is his singing voice just sounds like his speaking voice. Pretty much.
But a bit higher.
But set to music, kind of. It isn't talking. It's not like Rex Harrison in fucking My Fair Lady or something. He's singing, but it's not that different from his speaking voice.
He's talking in tune.
Yeah, kind of. He is singing, but it's if you kind of imagine what it might sound like, you're probably right. I never liked that film. The problem with a lot of musicals from me is they're just so fucking cheesy. And that's the problem. That film is so fucking cheesy and happy, and you end up watching these things and you feel like you're watching it with a hangover or something. You know when you watch something with a hangover and you're like, oh, quiet down for fuck's sake. That's how I am watching films like this, even when I'm feeling perfectly fine and in a good mood. So yeah, we didn't bother with the sequel, did we?
No, I mean, to be fair, I'm not a huge ABBA fan. So
Becca enjoyed it. Becca went to see it.
Yeah, and you know what? I've heard
she
good
said
things.
she said it was of a similar quality to the first one.
I've heard
which
good
I think
things.
is,
I've heard good things about it.
I'm just going to look at what I will before we move on. I will actually just look up the relative Rotten Tomato scores. So Mamma Mia and Mamma Mia. Here we go again. So Mamma Mia's got 54%, and Here We Go Again's got 79%. But then I suppose that would. Yeah, so it's actually better reviewed than the first one, you know. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not the target audience, but I would always try to review these things fairly, even allowing for that the first film kind of irritated me a bit. I just got it up at there, so...
Well, the audience here is 74, isn't it? And so, yeah, still... But, yeah, no, it wasn't... I was never going to bother with it. But...
No, but if I were married or I was dating or something like that and they wanted to see it, all joking aside, I'd go without complaint. I wouldn't, like, feign being dragged or whinge about it. I'd go if someone wanted to see it.
Yeah.
But there's no one in my life in that position and I wasn't sufficiently motivated to bother. So...
No. So, what's next? I forgot. Is it Mission Impossible time?
It is. It's Mission Impossible time. Do you want to go first?
Oh yeah, go on then. I think it's just. I think it's the film of the summer, for me, especially this end of the summer. I think you probably say Avengers: Infinity War is probably the first part of the summer. I think this is like when we get into the later part. This is like the big one. Whether it was successful to say Mamma Mia 2 or what, I don't know, but.
I looked up the box office of Mamma Mia 2. I might just quickly do that.
I mean, yeah,
there's a good chance it would beat it. No, nowhere near.
Really?
No, Mamma Mia 2 is currently on 319 million. Well, Mission Impossible's blasted past 500 already. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah. Not knocking Mamma Mia 2, but just because I think this film generally just because it is a pure popcorn summer entertainment. I've seen it twice now. I saw it fairly recently, and the first viewing I think was like a midnight showing, so I watched it again just to kind of refresh myself. And it is, as someone who's a huge fan of action, this scene just to me was just perfect in a lot of ways. It was just, I think, largely down to how it's paced. It just constantly moves. It just feels like you're on like a ride, and the plot may not be as intelligent. Though I don't think it's completely stupid or anything, but you can tell its first directive is this needs to be entertainment, and we need to be thinking about Tom Cruise's character. That's its main motives, and it's all the better for it. What do you think?
This is comfortably my favourite film of the summer, and I include the first half of the summer in that as well. When you talk about the plot, I think we're almost covering ourselves there. And what I mean by that is there are bits at the time where I've thought, does that make sense or not? I haven't really got time to think about it now. And I haven't been motivated to do so. Although I have listened to Empire's 3 7-hour reviews, whatever, interviews with Christopher McQuarrie on it. Their special. I didn't listen to the Empire podcast for years, but I looked it up to see what stuff they had on there recently, and they had like a 3-hour with Christopher McQuarrie, with Chris Hewitt.
3 hour, fucking hell.
Yeah, but that was part one. They went back and they did another one in like LA a couple of weeks later, and he goes into detail about the film, his directing, and it's absolutely recommended. And in the interim, they did their own sort of hour show where they talked about it as a spoiler special, the main, him and Helen O'Hara and so on. What we will say, the obvious caveat is next year, we will sit down and do the Mission Impossible films, and we will prepare for these to be discussed over like a 2-hour episode. So when we're talking about one film for 2 hours and the actual sequential plot, if you like, an hour of that, we may spot loads of holes that we kind of think might be there at the moment, but we haven't put too much time to thinking about. But the thing with the Mission Impossible films is I only really started to really love them with Ghost Protocol. Ghost Protocol was a really special cinematic experience for me. I came out buzzing. And when I went to see Rogue Nation, which I think is objectively just as good a film, actually, didn't get quite the same buzz. So I felt like they were a wash in that, like, Ghost Protocol was possibly the better film, but Rogue Nation had Rebecca Ferguson, who is a really special addition.
I think the problem with Rogue Nation was, and I think it was reflected in the interview with Chris McQuarrie, that they kind of felt they were kind of rushed to end the film. So that I think it ended on. You kind of feel like, all right, the ending's a bit rushed here. So I think Ghost Protocol felt of a piece and was very fun.
It also it was quite ingenious in places. The way they go into the Kremlin and stuff.
Yeah.
And all the stuff around the Burj Khalifa or whatever that building is called, the biggest building in the world. That was much. Whereas basically Rogue Nation's big money shot was pre-titled, him hanging off the plane. Now, some of the bike stuff after that was amazing, and Rebecca Ferguson was great, and actually...
And the tone as well, it felt very Bondian, it felt very...
It's the most, I think, the most Bondian of the first 5 was certainly Rogue Nation, not just because he wore a tux at one point, but it just felt that way. The way they globetrot, the way they turn up there, and then they turn up there, and there's some event they've got to infiltrate, and they've got to make it up as they go along. It even felt like had a pre-title sequence, on the plane, It felt very... Well, yeah, I mean, they have gone very pre-title now. There's a little sort of mini story, and then instead of some sort of brassy singer and dancing girls, it's the Mission Impossible theme, and then into the film proper. It's very Bond in that regard, although I don't think it's that Bond overall. But then we come to this one where I think probably Ghost Protocol at the time was my favourite of the series. The one caveat I'll say is no matter how much I enjoy these films, I'm never quite sure how well I remember them in terms of like the actual plots and stuff. This film started a bit slower. This film just started a bit slower. Him in Belfast. It should have been a precursor of what was coming. They didn't know that was Belfast until they decided it was Belfast, if you like. It's not where it was shot. But Macquarie says that was almost a throwaway on the interview. But actually you realise what an empty life Ethan's got. But it doesn't belabor anything. This film doesn't suddenly become, we want to do a heavy character piece. It's a Mission Impossible film of a piece with all the other Mission Impossible films, but it just starts trying to pay some things off because we don't know Ethan Hunt very well. And in fact, he was quite inconsistently characterized through the first 2 or 3 films anyway. But the team are really cohesive now. They really... Because my worry was always Benji and Luther have the same skill set. We've got the same problem in the Fast franchise. You've got 2 characters in that franchise with identical skill sets. And actually, if it was like an Ocean's 11, you wouldn't need both of them. They're 2 people that do the same thing. But the team are really like sorted now, and they're really in place. And I've mentioned her 2 or 3 times. I think Rebecca Ferguson is one of the wisest additions you've ever had to this. We had the other lady in Ghost Protocol. What was she called? The one who was married to that wanker, Robin Thicke.
Oh, yes. Her name's escaped me now.
I've got to look at Robin Thicke to find it. Is that what he's called? I've forgotten his fucking name. He was married to Paula Patton.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Now I thought she was pretty good.
Yeah, I liked her.
This is the step up again. She's not a wet dream. She's not wet dream casting. She's just a woman in her mid-30s who's very attractive but quite interesting to look at because she kind of looks very European, but she can do all the action.
She moves very well.
She moves so well, and the thing is, you can put a crash helmet on her and she still moves really well. Yeah. I mean, there is some body double work in this because she was pregnant for a lot of it, but I sort of think I can tell when it's her, but although I would likely be wrong with a lot of that. It just doesn't let go. It gets off to a slow start, deliberately, I think, because we've got just Ethan in a more reflective mood and starting to have these dreams. We've never seen inside his head before. We've never been privy to what he's thinking. Some of the bits around the plutonium don't quite make sense to me, but again, I need a proper 2-hour review and a full week of prepping to get into that. But the films just go, and there was a scene where I was watching Tom Cruise running across the rooftops of London. But it's not like a Casino Royale stroke Bourne thing where it's like free running, lots of little buildings. He'll jump onto a building and then it's like a fucking quarter of a mile along to run. And I actually sat there and thought, he was born to do this. Has there ever been a better cinematic runner? He was just born.
All those gay thoughts.
Some dramatic gay thoughts in this film because he's running for a very long time. But I mean, I just loved everything about it. The action scenes keep building. Some of them weren't as thrilling as I was expecting. Like the Halo jump didn't excite me as much as I thought it was.
But it still looks great, though. I mean, like
I think looks great. It impressed me more than excited me. I was watching it going, shit, that's really him. And a cameraman's jumped out with a fucking high resolution camera on his fucking head, like an 8K camera.
I think and also the way it constantly just moves, like it doesn't sort of like go, oh, was that it? Then you got to wait for the next sequence. It constantly just like he doesn't let up. It doesn't feel like, oh well, it is next bit of action.
They use their budget so wisely because when you think something like Spectre was tipping 300 million, this is coming in at about 170 something, I believe. Now, whether Tom Cruise is sort of back-ended his deal and put a lot of it on profits, I don't know. But you got a reasonably sizable cast here. Most of them are decent career actors with decent careers and therefore decent asks to be in things. I don't know. I suppose the CG budget wouldn't be that massive, but you are staging these massive, big stunts. The insurance bill for this film would be really high. I mean, I think it was Ghost Protocol. He might have done it since. He actually gave up his salary so that they could pay this really expensive insurance and stuck everything on the back end of it. He gave up 20 million in order to say, I'm doing the stunts.
And just think about it, like Tom Cruise actually learnt to fly a helicopter in a ridiculous short amount of time just so he could do it himself. Yeah,
well, apparently what Macquarie said is when he said he was going to do it, because originally he was a bit reluctant to, he went to Cruise and said, what do you want to do in the next film, i.e. what types of set pieces interest you? And apparently he just started to learn helicopter then, and he said, I want to fly a helicopter. But he had to do 2,000 hours. And the only bit that isn't him is when the payload's hanging from it, apparently. When the payload's hanging from it, that's not him because that's a different level of license, I guess, again. But that is part of the selling of these films, that you've just got this mad bastard doing it all himself. But he's not. It's just the level of commitment, because it isn't about being a daredevil or being brave. It ain't, oh yeah, I'll throw myself off the building. He has to learn to do it like a professional stuntman. So there are stunts in this film that he spent like a year prepping. And that level of commitment. I remember when he was in Rain Man back in the 80s, and he was saying, yeah, we prepared that character for 2 years. And it's like, you're not even the lead. And you worked for 2 years on that character. Charlie Babbitt in Rain Man, which was still one of his best performances, actually. It's the level of commitment and by extension, love that goes into these films. And for what is product and a rinse and repeat, and it could just be a bunch of unconnected action sequences, and that would be it, and we'd probably still enjoy it. But they've put a bit of emotional heart and heft in this film without really signposting they are, without going, well, this is going to be the emotional film in the franchise, or this is going to be the thematic weight is going to be in this film. It's a Mission Impossible film like any other, but actually it just pays off the whole Julia storyline and hints at a possible future with Ilsa, obviously.
It also kind of makes sense of his character in the entire series as well, because it's the only film that generally sort of ties it all together, particularly with how his whole principle of like, he tries to get out of a situation without harming any innocents. That's always been a consistent thing. So to put him in those situations where that's tested, and to put him in that mindset where he's like,
I know, and getting Sean Harris out, Solomon Lane out, is like 5 times harder because he doesn't want to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
The plan he has to do is much, much more convoluted because he won't hurt anyone.
Yeah. And as you say, there is genuine love and just wanting to just deliver the best possible entertainment he can do. Like, it's not many people out there who would just go to the lengths that he does. I mean, Tom Cruise, he is a fucking crazy bastard. Absolutely insane.
But in a controlled and intelligent way. It's not a daredevil, although there might be a bit of that about him. But, if he's got to throw himself off something, there is presumably he's still working with stunt coordinators and learning how to do it and designing it. It's not just a question of going, I'll throw myself off it, just make sure the camera's rolling. The amount of work he has to throw into this is phenomenal, and he's 56 years of age now. So that is impressive in itself.
It's all that Scientology, telling you, Dave.
All of that. But the other thing is, what I really like about these films is they give me heart, because I feel like such a miserable bastard, particularly on the other podcast where we get to the end sequences of films, the third act, and I start checking out and moaning and all the rest of it. Not moaning. I mean, not that we've ever had complaints over it, but certainly I'm not.
You feel drained by the end of it. It's like, right,
I feel like, oh well, it's action, isn't it? Dave shit with action. Well, these films remind me I'm not. It's just that it's treated as such a perfunctory sign off a film kind of thing most of the time, and it actually makes me realise most people are shit at shooting action. Actually, I think that's what it is. Because if I had to put my best 10 films of the decade down now, The Raid 2 would be in there, for example, and there would be, and one or other of the John Wick films might be in there as well. If I thought about it, I'd have to think about that because I haven't, but I know The Raid 2 would be in there. Not the first Raid, strangely enough. And then I'll go and watch these, and I tell you what, it reminded me of when we started our Tarantino series. I was living, you know it, because I was talking to you like away from the podcast as well. I was living Tarantino for a few weeks. I was playing all his podcasts, his soundtracks. I was listening to other podcasts about him. I was looking up films even that he'd been in or was influenced by him. And I was really I really just wanted to immerse myself in that world. I had a little bit of that after this film. I got hold of all the films, and I watched 3, and I watched a lot of 4 and 5, and I was even showing my mum different stunts from it because she'd seen a bit of him on Graham Norton, and she was like, I said, look, he did this himself, look at this. I said, they painted out some guide wires. I said, so, he's not going to fall to his death, but, and the stunt where he had to basically unhook himself and leap through that window on that tall building in 4, she gasped, she audibly gasped because she's not used to action at all. But it gives me heart that there's this whole wing of cinema that I feel cut off from because I just go an action scene, and I sound like I'm setting myself above it. Well, I'm not, because I started off podcasting on Bond, which is not super highbrow, and I went on to indie, which were B movies, and I've done a load of superhero stuff and stuff like that since. I'm hardly elitist in my film watching, but my lack of appreciation for action in most things starts making me think I am, and it's largely because the action is never normally well shot, and it's normally at the expense of everything else. The film we're going to get to last tonight, I liked, a spoiler alert, quite a lot, more than its reviews, but it put into sharp relief all those Liam Neeson actioners, where the character work is fucking shit. All the Taken films where it's my daughter's doing his driving test. I don't give a shit. I don't care. And they just lamely stitch together this family.
Yeah, I think it's one of the untold things. I think what really makes an action movie fly is the character work. Once you nail the character work,
you've got to get that bit right. And if you get that bit right, the action bit can take you. But even then, you have to not be thinking, well, the film has switched its story portion off, and now we're just watching action. And also, the action has to be well shot, and it's so fucking difficult to do well. And Mission Impossible has just absolutely stormed it this year. Best summer film of the year by a distance.
One of the things that also I did like to, I mean, we've kind of touched on it, but Tom Cruise is never really considered an action star. And watching this, I suddenly thought,
He's the action star.
It's I was like, well, you know what? He does not get enough credit. The guy is up there with any of action star you
well,
care
I mean,
to
the
mention.
bathroom scene took 4 weeks to shoot.
Mm.
You know, and what I loved is that, you know, he was saying, you know, that they've got a little bit of a school going, you know, and all the other actors, and he talks to them about their skill set and what they're interested in, you know, and they start trying to encourage the other actors to do their own stunts, but only where they're comfortable. And, you know, I don't think anyone expects anyone to be him, but you can see they're all game for it. And I get the impression that people enjoy making these. And I think that shows. I really enjoyed Henry Cavill in this. A lot of people complained he's wooden. I thought it was terrific.
Oh no, I did. I mean, he does do a good spoiler. He does do a good bad guy. But then there's like, when I say spoiler, it's not really that much of a spoiler because we were always
they were caught between two stools because I mean they wanted to make some hay out of the broken ankle thing in that promoting it, almost saying look at the commitment here, but they kind of gave it away in conversation. I was chasing Henry. It's like, well, if you're chasing Henry, he's a bad guy, isn't he? And it was given away in the trailers with them, you know, helicopters, and they were clearly fighting each other.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, there was room for it because you had the line of like, if you go rogue, he's got permission to shoot you.
So it could have been something like that. Yeah,
it could have been like.
I wasn't sure, and the one bit I think when I go through it again is where it's finally revealed. I'm thinking, why would Henry Cavill be there, and why hasn't he done this? 2 or 3 things like flipped through my mind where I was thinking that doesn't make sense, and I almost stamped on it because I just thought.
But the movie gives it away subtly when he hands Annette Bennett. Is it not Annette Bennett? What's her name?
Who are you talking about?
His boss, the CIA.
And Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett, yes.
Yeah.
We answer the phone. It's like clearly a new phone that's not broken, which it's like, oh, that's...
Yeah, no, I noticed that when he gave the phone. I thought, oh, that was not broken. So yeah, I think that's what gave it away. But then he was in. But there's still room for possible explanations. Then you see him in the very next scene, and you go in, hang on, you've got it all. None of this actually makes sense. But it's small things.
I really liked his death. He's got a really cool death as well.
He has got a cool death in it. I just think everybody's terrific, and they give everybody something to do. You know, and sometimes if you want to see how you give everyone something to do badly, go and watch like the first Fantastic Four film, where not the first one as in the Roger Corman, the first Tim Story one, where they all do something to bring down Doom at the end of it, and it is so designed around trying to give them all something to do, and it's terrible. They've really nailed it in these films. You know, Ethan can't do what Ethan does without that team, and the level of trust is incredible. They trust that they will get it done.
Right at the very end, because that's what it sort of had.
And we know it's the last second.
He's trusting him to do this. They're trusting them to do that, and they're trusting him to get the.
But we have to give him every second because it likely will be really tough, and if he doesn't do it, we're dead anyway.
Yeah.
But I just loved everyone in this. I think Christopher McQuarrie's absolutely the right guy for it. I think Tom Cruise is just absolutely perfect at this. I think Rebecca Ferguson now, I think, has just been the best addition since I say since Simon Pegg, but it took me a couple of films to get used to him being in the role, to be honest. But yeah, I loved it. My favourite film of the summer by a distance.
Yeah. Really, I think it's largely down to like the editing just so tight right to the very end. You just like
it's a 2.5 hour film. You wouldn't believe it.
And I think everything just felt right up to the final sequence where you got like when it cuts to like the sun, and you're not sure what exactly it is you're looking at, and you see Tom Cruise hanging off there, and he spits out the button. You think everything's just timed almost like perfection. So generally really. Really good stuff. Probably the best action movies I've seen recently. I think I dare say it's probably an action classic. Yes. I think I'd just probably put.
But then I think the last three have all been. I think if I need to sit and think about it next year.
Well, I think this film enhances the series as a whole.
I think because it deals with some threads and manages to unobtrusively get us into some deeper thematic areas without going, now we're doing our deep thematic stuff. Because it managed to do all that so naturally, it probably is the best of the last three. But I am reminded that there are a couple of stunts in the previous two films that I utterly adore. And also the run into the credits. I think accidentally, we were talking about it on Do You Expect Us to Talk, and I said the wrong film. and I didn't catch it till I edited because I had the right name in my head and then said the wrong one. I said Rogue Nation. I didn't mean that. Ghost Protocol, the transition into the titles is perfect, where he says light the fuse and it's organically part of the scene. That's great. So there are bits in the other films that I adore. I love the Kremlin stuff in 4. But, you know, you're watching him. Macquarie was explaining how much harder the stunts were in this film because Paris roads, they're cobbled. So, or a lot of them are cobbled. So when he's riding against traffic on the Champs-Élysées without a helmet, he's on cobbled streets that aren't designed for those sorts of sequences, and that type of bike is not designed for that stuff. So I do recommend his show on that, the Empire podcast specials with Christopher McQuarrie. There are 2 parts to it. Totally worth listening to. Quite an insight into all of this. Every time you see Tom Cruise, it's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Unless the biggest confidence trick on the cinema-going market ever has been played. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff now, so there's a lot of proof there, if you like, or evidence, certainly. Yeah.
Definitely. And also, there's also a ton of action even edited out, so by the time it comes out on Blu-ray, it'll have, like obviously, there's lots of, like, stuff in the trailers that wasn't in the film. So it makes you think, Jesus Christ, what else did they shoot, you know?
Well, they shot for a long time, and I think the other thing is, certainly in this film, and he does sort of address this, he's... he being Christopher McQuarrie has got a lot less slavish about filming the script, in that he's able to develop things as he goes along and work things out as he goes on. He's got a script, but he's like, no, we'll change that and we'll do this and we'll think about doing it this way and we'll try it that way. And so they do film things that end up not working.
It's very much always in process. So, like, if they feel like, actually, no, it'd be kind of better if we do this, like, on the spot, they go, right, let's go with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's crazy. I think they start shooting without a script. But here we go.
I don't think he started without a script by any means. But having said that, he did say it's put him under pressure now because he started without the scripts totally locked. The studio just like, well, you could start straight away. They want these a little bit quicker because obviously until recently these films were a long, long way apart in time. And of course, we're only 3 years since the last one. And I think that's the sort of turnaround Paramount won. And I can understand it because Tom Cruise is 56 as well. How many more of these can he do? But then having said that, like I keep hinting at, we've got a film at the end which has a man in his mid-60s and he's still, able to do action. So, and he is.
Even Liam Neeson to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, definitely. So, what's next on the to-watch pile?
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh shit! Yeah, I completely forgot the fucking Marvel film. So, what do you make of Ant-Man and the Wasp?
Really middling Marvel, which is not it's not a complaint at all. It followed Mission Impossible, and I was still in that headspace.
A middling Marvel is better than a middling film in general, isn't it? Really,
it is really. I mean, I went to see it though, and all the action's a bit less thrilling because I was watching this fucking.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to call Mission Impossible a masterpiece. I think I don't want to do what I did with. Normally, it's only things I'm massively a fan of, like Bond. Where I massively overrated Spectre on release because I was excited, whereas most films I can watch with a fairly clear head, even things I like. But Mission Impossible, because of its inherent quality and how much it has taken me, I'm aware that in 6 months' time I might just go, well, it was another Mission Impossible film. It was very good, but so I don't want to overstate it. But I got so into it and enjoyed it so much that Ant-Man and the Wasp was arguably like a week too early, in that I'd only been 8 days before watching Tom Cruise doing his thing, and obviously Paul Rudd is no Tom Cruise. But I think I've got to think about this because we're going to be reviewing it properly in a few months. We're currently on Do You Expect Us to Talk on Marvel, so we're already in the midst of the series this falls in. So when I say in a few months, I don't mean we're going to get to Marvel, we're on Marvel. So Ant-Man is only about 7 or 8 weeks away, the first one. But my gut feeling at the moment is I think I marginally prefer it to the first one. There are a couple of humour ticks in the first one that work better in the first one because they were new, like Luis. telling his stories, with everyone else sort of speaking in his parlance or mouthing to his words. That worked better the first time, but it was still very good in this. I think we've got a stronger villain than the first film. We've got a bit more emotional stakes for the people involved. I think calling it Ant-Man and the Wasp is generous in that everything personal is about Scott Lang. It's about, we see his house and his life and his relationship with his daughter. Don't really see as much of Evangeline Lilly, except she wants her mum. It's one of the few films ever that Walton Goggins has slightly annoyed me. Because I like Walton Goggins. I think he's great in everything. He was doing my tits in this film. I was annoyed every time he was on screen.
Was he just being a bit too much Walton Goggins?
Too much, that's all. It needed to be sort of dialed back a bit. But I like the quote-unquote villain in this film, largely because she's not a villain. Lawrence Fishburne's always welcome to see in everything. The little bit of backstory, sort of seeing Michelle Pfeiffer look exactly like she did in Married to the Mob. So I really enjoyed it. But that's all. I think it doesn't surprise me that they've put both Ant-Man films after Avengers entries. The first one followed Age of Ultron. And I've seen reviews describe it as a palate cleanser, and it kind of is. Something with slightly smaller stakes, and a bit lighter would be the wrong word, because I think Marvel's tone is quite consistent, although it's more overtly comedic, I suppose. I don't know what else to say about it, except to sort of bounce off anything you might have to say about it. What did you think?
It was okay. I mean, to be honest, I think I prefer the first film. I did appreciate the villain being a lot more sympathetic and a lot more...
I do have to interrupt just to add that point, because I didn't make that clear. I didn't rewatch the first one, so a bit like some of the
I didn't either, but I'm going off memory.
So I'm going off memory.
Yeah, same here, to be honest with you. But from what I remember, I do prefer the first one, but it just felt very much a light, breezy film in comparison. It's perfectly fine, and that's what I walked away from. It didn't blow me away. Didn't have anything that was particularly memorable. But then again, it was perfectly enjoyable, and I did appreciate the villain being a lot more humanized. It was a lot more it just felt like very much like ornate, like natural.
She's not a villain. She just needs the same tool to save her own life.
You get the feeling at the end she's going to be like part of the team, like in the next film, kind of.
Yeah, because they go at the end of the film, they're going into the quantum realm to get some of the proteins, for want of a better word, that they can use to keep her stable.
Yeah.
So they obviously need to keep going and getting this medicine effectively.
Though I do think it was a little bit of a waste of Michelle Pfeiffer. I would have liked a bit more Pfeiffer in here.
Yes. Okay.
Which is a shame. I know we'll probably get more in the next film, which should be fine. But I did feel like we'll like.
She readjusts back to the normal sort of realm quite quickly, doesn't she?
Yeah.
No problem at all. 30 years of living off energy and fighting tardigrades or whatever.
You think after like coming out of there, you'd be like, "Fucking, I'm starving!" Like,
yeah. Well, I can imagine food is just
be like a Tony Stark thing. Where you're just like, I want an American cheeseburger.
A load of sloppy burgers. Yeah.
I want a press conference and American cheeseburger.
To be fair, what is food? Food is just there to break down into energy. So if she's getting energy a different way, she wouldn't need to eat.
Yeah.
Having said that, it would be very odd the first time she then has to eat a bowl of cereal or something.
Yeah.
She won't have done that in 30 years. But I liked the FBI agent, Jimmy Woo. I'm actually looking that name up because I couldn't remember what his name is.
The guy from the Into, guy who plays
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un, yeah.
I think what else I've seen him in though, because that's not what sprung to mind. I recognise
he's
him.
basically in a load of comedies. He keeps
not necessarily
up.
Directed by, but he's very much a Judd Apatow in tone kind of film appearer. But I'm looking to see what I know him from, and the only film that I'm really going, I know that film is Trainwreck. But I don't know how bad a bigger role he had in that. Neighbours I saw, but that doesn't look particularly big. Oh well, not to worry, I don't know. But yes, I recognised him pretty well. But yes, he was King Jong-un in the interview.
Yeah. And yeah, he's fine. I mean, he had one good gag where, like, at the end where he's like, "Oh, we should totally hang out."
I actually got the hint at the end that he might be interested romantically in Scott.
Did you?
Yes.
I didn't. I just thought he was just he's just a bit of a.
There was just something he said near the
maybe
end,
a bit of Billy No Mates more Nathan, maybe.
Yeah, could be.
But yeah,
possibly. But either way, he was quite. That was a good little character. Marvel are good at that, and that's the sort of thing you tend to realise in rewrites. Now we're 3 years from the last film. There hasn't been a lot of Scott Lang in much else apart from obviously Civil War, but they will have known at the time of making the first one they were planning to put him in that. So they've had 3 years to write and refine this with the same director they had last time, with a lot more time than he had last time because he was parachuting very close to principal photography to replace Edgar Wright last time. So you can tell things like that come out of rewrites. You don't tend to... Obviously, the Michael Pena stuff, that's rinse and repeating the joke from the first time. But throwing in a new character and actually let's make the FBI agent quite funny. That's the sort of thing that strikes me comes from rewrites and honing and refining. So I can tell that they've had a bit more time and comfort with this. And like I say, Hannah John Kamen is just more interesting than Thingy from House of Cards, who was in the first film. But the science has gone to shit. I mean, the first film, they really made an effort to sort of explain how it was working. This one, they've just let it go. The chase through San Francisco was good fun. You know, and the constant varying of size, and then it's suddenly a tiny little car and all the rest of it. That was all really kinetic and really well done.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. And I like the aspect of him going big, then like losing like oxygen, like kind of like just like his like almost like his powers are like affected because they aren't like quite functional because he's given like a prototype suit. So he's like,
some of that was funny as well. The prototype suit stuff where he grows to like the size of like a 2-year-old basically. You know, that reminded me of a joke in Inner Space from like 30 odd years ago.
Oh God, yeah.
So I did enjoy all that. The more I think about it, the more fun it was, the better it was. It was just like I say, it followed a very good film the week before, and it's not meant to be sort of. I'm sure Marvel wouldn't think of it this way, but it's not A-list Marvel, and all I mean by that is, obviously, it's not the team ups. The big film this year was Infinity War. But it's not even like a Black Panther or an Iron Man. It's they wouldn't expect that sort of gross. That, you know, they'd be happy with 600 million worldwide from this probably. Whereas if an Avengers film came out and did that, they'd be really, really disappointed. So it's meant to be a little bit smaller, and it's better for that. You don't, you know, how many superhero films did we see where it was a blue beam going up at the sky? Yeah. Now, admittedly, in The Avengers, that was still a great film, but it was in Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, the same year. It was in The Fantastic Four a year or two later, ad nauseam, you know, and others. And, you know, Marvel DC have tried in the early running to go this way. That Man of Steel, they were going to completely terraform Earth. Batman versus Superman, you've got an out-of-control, mindless super villain, you know. Justice League, similar. You know, it's very nice to just vary it sometimes. That, okay, the world is at risk in this one. In this one, really, it's only Wakanda at risk, or certain more downtrodden countries where he might take advantage. With this film, it's much more personal. Yeah, and I think you've got to vary it. I think this is what I've been arguing, just to almost go off the point with Star Wars, that if you keep shooting for $1 billion or $2 billion gross every time, you're going to effectively start making the same thing all the time. You know, except that every now and again you'll release a film that does 300 million, but that's almost by design because you've tried to do something a bit smaller and a bit more intimate and maybe play with genre a bit. I'm pleased Ant-Man film exists. I'm pleased they exist because next year we've got Captain Marvel and then the 4th Avengers film, and I think they're going to be very big with cosmic stakes.
Yeah,
and you can't have that in every film.
Isn't next one the Spider-Man after that? After
Avengers 4, yeah. That Spider-Man is like the film for that year. So that'll be the 3 next year: Captain Marvel, Avengers 4, Spider-Man Far From Home. And then the following year, we believe, and it's still subject to change for reasons I can't be asked to go into here, but there's supposed to be a third Guardians film and I think a second Black Panther film. And I don't know what the third one is after that.
Probably Doctor Strange, I would imagine.
Doctor Strange 2 could start filming in February, I read today, so it will be Doctor Strange 2. But apparently there's another Marvel project that's been unannounced that could start next summer, and I suspect that's Black Widow.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll wait and see. So
we'll wait and see. I don't know, but yeah, this was perfectly good.
It was also nice to see a bit more Angeline Lilly as well. I think she's quite decent.
They used the character all right, but the title character I would have expected.
Yeah,
to
a bit
be
more.
Scary. It is still Paul Rudd's film. It is.
I mean, I did wonder, like, why is she not a bigger star than she should be?
Well, she was going to quit acting for a while. I think she had some bad experiences. She's hinted at some bad experiences on Lost, where they forced her to go sort of semi-naked for scenes and stuff. I didn't read the details because I didn't really watch the show, so it would be contextless. And J.J. Abrams, who was obviously just the overseer of it, so there was no suggestion he was there or complicit in this. First thing he did was just apologise. He just said, "There's no excuse for that. I'm sorry." No. J.J. Abrams should be undamaged by it, but he immediately recognised that shouldn't have been the case. She was going to quit. I don't know if she was going to quit before or after The Hobbit. I think The Hobbit may have brought her back. But yeah, it's one of those things that she sort of falls a bit in and out of love with acting. Certainly Lost made her a very big star for a while. I think she's an interesting actress. I think she's got an interesting look as well. 'Cause she's undeniably beautiful, but I've never really warmed to like bland beauties. The Pamela Andersons and that's just fake, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I like a bit more seeming to be going on.
In that kind of like bitchy girl, like, well, she's beautiful in an obvious way.
But there's something to that. I like the idea of it. When I look at Evangeline Lilly, I can believe she's probably quite an intelligent woman, and there's something going on behind the eyes, and there's a bit of character and personality there.
Yeah.
And that's not true of every sort of beauty that makes it big. Nor with men either. The muscle-bound types that get put into things just because they're handsome or whatever.
Like Chris Hemsworth is like, obviously
he's got a lot going on, but
he's got a bit of twinkle behind the eyes. He's got like
our Christmas commentary last year. We did Love Actually, and we talked about that guy Laura Linney dated. Now it's no surprise to me that guy didn't become a big star because he's completely fucking vacant as a screen presence. He's like a good-looking guy who doesn't look like he's thinking about anything, and he might be really intelligent, but he can't show a camera that.
Hey, what's he been in though?
Some commercials. I've got a feeling he was in commercials.
No, he's been in stuff.
I thought he was in commercials with Nicole Kidman a few years ago. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, Evangeline Lilly is like not only beautiful, but she's interesting to look at as well. And
he's been in 300 and Westworld and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, none of those are on my sort of favourites list.
And Lost.
So yeah, I thought she would be a bigger star, but she's not. And when I look back at what she really done, I suppose was it after Real Steel she nearly quit? Yeah, she didn't do a film for a couple of years, and she was brought back for The Hobbit. She doesn't work a massive amount. But she does have 2 children. These people do have lives as well.
She might just be happy with what she does. She just goes like, yeah,
I'll do that.
I don't need to be that career driven.
But she's very good. She's very good in this, and she's quite convincing in the action. She's a very good physical actress.
Yeah, it just made me thinking like she's.
And I do think again, it's a PG-13 take on it in that I don't find it wildly combustible, but I buy that there's some chemistry between her and Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
They play off each other quite well, and it's quite nice because they go quiet a couple of times and they're just glaring at each other, gazing at each other. And like Michael Douglas is like, when you're finished, like staring at my door. That's pretty good.
That's got to be the most awkward thing to hear, isn't it?
I know.
When you're finished oogling my daughter.
Because you must be tempted for a minute to like deny it, and then you just like, well, I can't really, can I? Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. It's all right though. Yeah. It's taken 465 million to date. So again, very smaller end of Marvel, but that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. It's probably more along the lines of what they need after Infinity War. Just a little bit of a.
Oh, they both come after Avengers films.
Yeah. Though it is a bit funny how they all seem to be quite close together this year. The Marvel.
Yeah, February, April, and it would have been July, wouldn't it? But for the war. They have done that before. They did it with the first one. The first one was originally going to be later in the year, and it ended up coming out in July. It came out quite close to Age of Ultron. It gets confusing because occasionally they'll do like Thor and it'll come out in November. There's not much rhyme or reason to it. They definitely like effectively pre-summer. They seem to like a release around sort of Easter, maybe even before in some cases. But that sort of second stroke third film, depending on the year, the last film of the year that they release has varied between like July and November.
I think next year you got Captain Marvel, and you got like a month before the next Avengers.
It's like March.
But I think that'd be tactical with promotion, because I think there'll be a lot of stuff that'd be like, there'll be what's going to happen. I think they'll be quite hesitant to reveal what happens because there's going to be.
I saw a teaser today, by the way.
There's a teaser.
There's a teaser out today.
I'm
trying to work out if it's fan made or not. I think it's real.
Oh, okay.
Looks real to me. Have a look for the Captain Marvel teaser.
Well, it'll probably be Captain Marvel teaser. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So next up, is it the Meg? Is that what the Meg?
Which is a film I wouldn't have seen, but for the fact that we do a summer review.
Yeah.
So I'll go and see it. Difficult with Jason Statham because the less seriously he takes himself, the better the result. I think to Fast 8, where he was like having that fight and trying to protect a baby at the same time, and there's an inherent silliness to that. Spy, which was an out-and-out comedy. I don't expect him to be the same in the Meg, but there's like a knowing and a winking to it. Jason Statham through this film, and I said it on Facebook, and someone genuinely thought I was joking. Well, I was in that the tone I adopted, but I meant it. Jason Statham looks like he needs to fart in every scene of this film. He's taking it so fucking seriously. There's also some Chinese money in this film, which is absolutely fine as a concept, but it means that they've put some Chinese people in the cast, which again is fine in concept, but they've tried to like sell this romantic tension between him and one of the women in the film, and they've got no chemistry whatsoever. And the thing is,
I thought he had more chemistry with the kid.
Well, yes, there's that, but also his ex-wife's on board, and they have a bit of chemistry as well. And you think that shouldn't be. You shouldn't be thinking he's better off with his ex-wife.
Well, I thought the ex-wife thing was just kind of pointless. I was like, well, what's...
There was no point to that character, and I'd forgotten about her when she came back. She was in like sick bay, and then you see her again at the end. I think it's there to tell us that it ruined his life because it probably cost him his marriage, the incident at the start of the film. I think it's also to tell us he's not a bad guy really, because when he has to partner up with the woman at the end, his ex-wife is there smiling like, I still like him and we had a terrible marriage, you know what I mean? The kid is great because it's the only time Statham himself lightens up, and he's better the lighter he is, so he's pretty good round kids. I joked before I went in, I was saying like, I bet Statham goes like hand to hand with the shark, and the funny thing is, he doesn't exactly, but he does. I was joking he'd have a punch up with the shark, and he does kind of go hand to hand with it at the end. And I laughed really hard, where like most of my audience, I think, were feeling quite tense because it was a tense action sequence right at the end. And I tell you what, it was packed. I don't know if it's because it was like school holidays or what, but this cinema screen, and it was one of the bigger ones, was packed for the Meg, which really surprised me. But I laughed out loud during this bit where he went hand to hand with the shark, and I swear the whole screen turned and looked at me. And my friend said to me, he said, "There's your fucking impulse control problem again." So yeah, that's that was the Meg for me. I thought it took itself too seriously. It wasn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. It's not quite big budget enough to have seamless CG. You need to be in a slightly higher bracket than this. But it was decent. I wasn't ever bored. It was fairly tense in some places. It was okay.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to Skyscraper, which is kind of same because it's that kind of film, isn't it?
It is. It was going to be. We would inevitably end up comparing the two. I think I like it more than Skyscraper.
Yeah, I don't know. I must admit, I wanted to have more fun with it than they actually did, but as you say, I wasn't bored by it. I would have liked to see a bit more gore. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more kind of carnage, a bit more fun in that aspect. But with it being a 12A, they might have been pushing for, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And with it being like a huge shark, I can't imagine there's many ways you could do that. Other than like, well, you just swallow them whole again. but yeah,
it just takes everything far, far too seriously. Except he doesn't. In that, I think if you sat down with Jason Statham and talked to him about his career, I think he's done enough sort of self-deprecating things that he's not wildly precious.
Yeah.
He does work hard. He does keep himself in terrific shape. You know, he's made the best of his talent level. When you bear in mind, he first came to the public eye high board diving in the Commonwealth Games for England in the 1990 Commonwealth Games. You know, he didn't start life as an action star or an actor, really.
Well, he's in Lockstock, wasn't he, first?
No, as an actor, maybe. I don't know what his history was before that, but you know, he's made the best of what he has, and he keeps himself extremely fit. He's got very, very good comic timing. The problem is that he seems to get a bit confused over what films he can show that in and what films he can't. I'm not quite sure he's in on the joke that he's a B-movie star. And, you know, he can be a bit more nodding and winking than perhaps he is. This film, he's very, very over-serious, except when he's talking to the kid. That stuff works all right.
Yeah. He gets on really well, the kid. It's almost like the kid is like the female lead, really, to an extent.
Yeah, she lightens him. She sort of humanises him a bit. I mean, he's all right the first time. When they find him and he's living in, like, Hong Kong, getting really drunk all the time or something. It wasn't Hong Kong, but somewhere in the forest. All of that was okay. I enjoyed it just fine, and I was in an audience full of people that clearly enjoyed it. But there was this weird mismatch of a cast because of where the budget was coming. It's a bit like when I went to see the fourth Transformers film, and it was 50 minutes too long because they had to put this whole Chinese sequence in because there was some Chinese funding. And you just go, well, cut that bit, but you can't because you got the funding. Here, it's almost like in the casting choices. Yeah. It's almost like, I've got no problem with there being Chinese people in the cast. Please don't anyone think that's what I'm saying. But perhaps where the chemistry and mix isn't quite right, well, you can't do anything about it because it's mandated by where the funding's coming from. Rainn Wilson got on my tits, but that's not unusual because he's got on my tits in everything except The Office where he did, but he was meant to. And apart from that, there isn't an awful lot to say. It's a B movie. It's an okay B movie. They tense it up quite nicely where they can, but it finished with Jason Statham going hand-to-hand with a shark. And the frightening thing is, I don't think anyone involved in the making of the film can see the inherent hilarity of that.
I don't know. I mean, I thought it was quite funny, and
that's the point.
But it had
you and I can see it's funny. The people making it thought that's a great action.
But also at the end where like the shark gets eaten by the other sharks, it was almost like I felt like, hang on, I saw this in fucking Justice League. It's like, it's like what's that smell? Do you smell fear? I think it was fine. I mean, I did like the. Even though they didn't quite have the same chemistry as Statham did with the kid, Ling Bing Bing, as it. Oh, that sounds really bad.
That sounded awful, but you didn't mean it, so it doesn't matter.
But that's if you look at it, it is literally Lee Bing Bing. Bing, Bing. That's how we.
It's a bit. We can all. Yeah, we know what you're getting at. Go on.
But yeah, I thought she's actually a very likeable presence, and yeah, it's fine. It's perfectly watchable. I could have done more deaths, a lot more sequences, but you know what? It fit the bill for it's a good passable under 2 hours, isn't it? So
I don't know its running time, but it didn't outstay its welcome. I will say that.
Yeah.
No, it was fine.
So yeah, that's the Meg.
You know, and we've got a summer here, and we're going to get to the last one in a minute. But you know, this is why when you talk about, and I don't want to get into casting Bond now, but when they say, why don't you cast so and so, and you say, well, they're too old, and they go, well, yeah, Roger Moore. Well, it wouldn't fly anymore. The modern breed of action star needs to show this sort of level of commitment. Now, they don't always have to do the same number of stunts as Tom Cruise. Now, I know Tom Cruise is 56, but, you know, the sort of exception that proves the rule, maybe.
Are you talking about a sort of like potential next Bond and whatever?
Yeah, agents.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm not talking about a specific person. I'm talking about somebody will say, well, Roger Moore did it. And it's like, well, okay, forgetting how good his casting was.
I would say, he was too old then.
And he was too old. He was too old. I mean, he looked okay in the first couple, but then he was too old. But even if you think he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I've got a lot of regard for him in my way, but you can't do that now. You know, all right, they're not all going to be Tom Cruise where they're literally doing everything themselves, but look at the shape Statham is in. Look at the state The Rock is in. You know, Paul Rudd's a little bit different, but even then he's got himself in shape and done as much as he can. The days of just the moment it's over walking pace, letting someone else do it are gone. And I will say that for Statham. I mean, I know he started off as a sportsman, but my God, does he keep himself in good condition?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think he's got a niche as like doing these kind of action films, and he enjoys doing it, and he all benefit. I think he started out like when he did the transporter films. Yeah. He was like kind of sort of getting involved with the stunt work, but basically saying like, no, I kind of want to be doing what they're doing, you know. So he's always very much wanted to be involved in doing the stunt stuff. So all credit to him for that. So what's next on the bill? Last
up, and it's literally from, like I say,
talk about geriatric
action stars. I actually, like I say, we normally
you wouldn't know how old Denzel was, really. I mean, if you
no, the only clue's the neck a little bit. His neck's got a little bit. He's an older man now, but no. I mean, he's 64.
I think sometimes how his mouth hangs as well is a little bit
old manish.
Yeah,
it does. But
I'd
buy a lot younger. I would. We're talking about The Equalizer 2, of course, which is very fresh for me because I saw it last night, and then I sat and watched the 2014 original, The Equalizer, this morning.
Yeah.
Just to sort of get a feel, because I couldn't remember the first one. I saw it, but I only ever saw it once, and I couldn't remember very much about it. In fact, I looked it up, and it said starring so-and-so and Chloe Grace Moretz, and I was like, I don't remember her in that film at all. And last night when I watched it, I was thinking, oh, but Bill Pullman, Melissa Leo, sorry. Well, they were both in the first film, and I'd just forgotten them completely. So I watched it again, because the other thing is, when I left the cinema last night, I was talking to my friend, and he said to me, it's less of a straight-up, like, revenge action film than the first one. And I thought, I can't comment on that. I need to go and watch it. And actually, watching the first one today, he's right. The first one is like one of these Liam Neeson films with a little bit less family melodrama, like I say. Was it Taken 2 or 3 where his daughter's like taking her driving test? It's like, who gives a shit about that? But it's totally trying to do the family thing and the personal life stuff and not having a clue how to do it. So just writing down some things about this character and then playing them out rather than any kind of organic character. So you've got one of those films, but you take away the family melodrama and you frankly, and I've liked Liam Neeson in quite a lot of stuff. I quite like him. When we did the Love Actually review at Christmas, we were talking about how terrific he is in that film.
He's probably the best performance in the film.
Yes, but Denzel Washington, let's not kid ourselves, is a far, far, far better actor and screen presence. So the first film is just like watching one of those films, but a bit more stripped back and with a better leading man. The second film for me, I'm going to go out and say it now, I think the second one's better in all but one regard, and I'll get to the one regard in a minute. But the sequel just puts a little bit more meat on the bones of this guy for me. But again, without listing a load of character traits or showing us, fucking making his auntie some fucking tea or something, which you get in the Liam Neeson equivalents. And it's just, I thought earlier, it's a bit like if Paddington was really good at kicking people's asses. Because when I walked out of Paddington 2, I wanted to be a better person. And I feel like that after watching these. Because, yes, he's killing people and stuff, but he's just fundamentally trying to pay it forward, just trying to be decent, and he's trying to help people. That's all he's trying to do, help people. And I just love that. My one flaw with it is the pacing, but that's not. But it isn't that it's not pacing as in I'm bored now or when's this going to get started.
It really kicks off 40 minutes in, doesn't it? Really,
it's almost from a film theory perspective, because the main plot of the film starts and you go, 45 minutes have gone by, and we've been talking about this boy, and we've been talking about this woman who does the garden outside his house, and we've been talking about this woman who's clearly been sexually abused. The sort of thing that you'd normally reintroduce in a 5 or 10 minute almost pre-title is 45 minutes in this film, and then when we get to the final act of the film, which is effectively not the final act but the final reveal that it's his ex-colleague that was responsible, was something like an hour. I can't remember now. I think we're about an hour and 45 minutes before we even hit what you would recognise as Act 3, and that's in a film that isn't much more than 2 hours. So from a film theory perspective, and I've done very little study on film formally or anything, it's just not how you break a film up. But the first film had some weird slow motion stuff in it that it doesn't have. It's beautifully shot, right from the very first scene where we just get cameras along the side of this train, because it's pre-title, if you like, is an action sequence in Istanbul, or on the train heading towards Istanbul, and he's basically undercover as a Muslim guy on a train trying to get a little girl back for her mother from a father who's absconded with her, and I just thought it was really good. I was people like Martin White and others who've spoken it up. I was getting ready to come home and take the piss out of them, because the first film was all right and the reviews of this weren't very great. So I was going to lightheartedly rib them about talking it up as one of the films of the year and stuff, because they were talking it up like it was like a Mission Impossible. It isn't that. Yeah. But I had a great time with it. I think it's comfortably better than the first one. The first one kind of did outstay its welcome. I was a bit bored in the final action sequence in the hardware store. This film just carries it really, really well. It's got more emotional heart to it in some ways. His wife was only hinted at in the first one. He spends more time towards the end in his home little village, town, whatever you want to call it. And I'm starting to ramble, so tell me what you think.
Yeah, you kind of hitting along kind of right. When I first saw when the first one came out, it was kind of along the lines of, John Wick hadn't come out in the States. It came along at the same time as John Wick. But I was really anticipating, oh my god, really anticipating a really good action film, and then I saw this at cinema, and I was like,
it's the A movie to Taken's B movie, isn't it? Yeah, what you'd expect.
And I watched it, and it was I really, really enjoyed it in a really oh my god, I haven't seen an R-rated or 15 certificate action film that I was genuinely surprised by. Oh my god, I generally really enjoyed that. That was really good. Now, I do think it's probably, it was too long, but I think the differences between this and that one, this one's a lot more shorter. It's about 20 minutes shorter, isn't it, roughly?
I don't think it is. I think actually, what was the first one?
About 15 minutes, maybe.
I thought the first one was only about 2:06. I thought it was about 5 minutes. All right, it doesn't matter, though. This one feels shorter. A bit shorter.
But I think this one takes its time. There's less. The actual plot itself isn't. There isn't much to it, but it spends a lot more time with the character. It spends a lot of time with the other characters, and I think
doesn't feel the point here, does it?
Yeah, it kind of feels like we're just going to let It's a lot more chilled out, and it just feels like we're just going to let Robert McCall do his thing, and you kind of think, well, that's kind of what I want to see when I go and watch.
Cab Driver is a smarter decision for him as well than Hardware Store Helper, because cab drivers kind of watch the world, don't they?
Yeah, but to be fair, it's on the first one. The first one is him kind of getting back in, basically doing the things he's doing now because he wasn't actively doing anything at the start of the film.
That's true. Yeah.
What I really like about both films really is, as you said, he is someone who just, rather than just go out and just beat people up, he always wants to encourage the right thing. So
gives them a chance.
So when everyone who's around him, he always kind of like, you know, like the kid Miles. It's like it's constant sort of like, I want to be a positive influence. So he's like sort of almost like just be like a passive positive mentor. And when they engage with him, he's like, you know what, I'm going to sort of teach them more standards. And you know what, I'll tell you what, you can do that, but read this book, improve yourself, be better. And it's like, it does make you think, yeah, there should be more of this. But as you say, when he confronts the villains, no matter every time, he gives them a chance. It's like
when he went and got that lad out of that tower block with the drugs and the guns, and the bit where he forces the gun to his own head and starts talking to him, that actually got me. I nearly choked up at that.
Really?
That nearly got me. Not because he could have had his brains blown out, but because there was an actual real emotional connection between the two of them for a moment. Denzel Washington's an extremely talented man. It's as simple as that. And all I've wanted to do in the 24 hours since is sort of watch Denzel Washington films. So I watched this, and I started watching Flight tonight, which I have seen before, but I didn't have time after that because we've come to do this. But that'll fade like everything else. You come out of a Mission Impossible film, if it's that good, you want to watch all the previous ones, you know, and it fades because something else comes along. But I realise how much more talented he is than Liam Neeson in a similar sort of context, but also how much better Fuqua is. He's kind of, you know, he's never going to be an Oscar bait director, but there's an inherent higher quality to what he's doing.
Fuqua's play is better than his reputation.
You look at his filmography and you go, I'm surprised he hasn't done quote unquote better than that. Because he's a really quality fit. He's certainly better than the Luc fucking Bessons and acolytes of this world. So I know he's got his fans.
He's competent. He's definitely competent director. You're not going to go like, oh shit, he's directing it. Fucking hell, that's a waste of time.
This is not a Taken or something like that. An old man does revenge, and they also tailor the action to what he can do. It's very efficient. Very efficient.
If he was directing an action film, you'd be like, yeah, all right, fine. I'd be happy with that.
But I was really happy with all of it. I mean, yeah, the plot's kind of neither here nor there, but the action's really good. I mean, he's got a guy behind him in the back of his cab trying to shoot and stab him, and he's having to sort of vary the speed of the car and move it around to stop it and stuff. And I'm watching that thinking, Christ, this is the best Edward Woodward's ever been. It was, really, really good.
He even gets away with blackface.
I having seen them both in the last 24 hours, I prefer it to the first one. I think there's a case to be made for either, but frankly, it's one of those things where you could just watch this man do anything. He's a very quiet, passive presence in this film, and it takes a real actor to know to do that, because you could really try sort of commanding the screen and intimidating those around you. And actually, Robert McCall is meant to be a small character.
Yeah, like a guy just passes along and just... Yeah.
No, I love the essential... I know it sounds odd because he murders a lot of people in these films, but it is akin to watching like a Paddington. I walk out going, I wish I was that decent. Just that decent to constantly look at ways you can help people and add value to their lives, and actually just leave people better than you find them.
I think that's kind of... Yeah, it's always... You are right in that sense. It's just that Robert McCall has obviously... He has this kind of almost... This demon inside him, which he kind of keeps enclosed. He kind of like lets his better part of himself do most of the work, but he only lets that demon out when he has to. So it's only like, right, well, I did everything I could. Now you unleash the beast, to extent. So he only does it like when it's needed, when it's required. Other than that, he gives everyone a chance, and that's kind of what I really take to the character. So
one of the if we look at the summer as a whole, I think in part one I was talking about Ready Player One as my sort of surprise of the year. I think this is my surprise of part two. I went because it was something to do. We do a summer review. The first one was all right, but I couldn't remember anything about it. Even Training Day. Training Day's produced one of the best acting performances I've ever seen. Denzel Washington in Training Day, I've only ever seen a couple of acting performances I consider in the same league. I mean that. But The Madness of King George springs to mind with Nigel Hawthorne, but there aren't many. He is unbelievably good in that film. Fuqua would take a bit of credit for that as well. But you look back through his filmography, it's not that amazing. And Denzel Washington, for all the quality he's done, I mean, he worked with Tony Scott for a number of years and produced quite a lot of forgettable films, even allowing for the fact that I'm not a Tony Scott fan. If Tony Scott was still alive, he'd still be working with him, and this film tells me that, because this is like a better version of a Tony Scott film in some respects.
Yeah.
Not as stylized as Tony Scott would have made it.
I can imagine like this would have been like a Tony Scott film. The Tony Scott films had Tony Scott not died.
I think Tony Scott would probably have been offered them as well. I think they'd be a little bit more stylized if they were him. I mean, if the same basic material was the same, they'd probably be pretty decent. And I have to admit, there's a couple of Tony Scotts I've not seen. I haven't seen Man on Fire, which is the one everyone talks up. So, but what I'm saying is that the fact that Denzel Washington is in it is not necessarily a mark of quality, because it's not.
Have you seen Virtuosity?
It's not that he can't pick a script.
Yeah.
It's that he's quite flexible about the types of things he appears in. He doesn't ever do anything where I think he sold his soul there. I always believe he wants to do it. He doesn't turn up in, I can't imagine him turning up. Maybe he did. I don't think so. But I can't imagine him turning up in Spy Kids 3D or something.
Yeah.
He does do things that seem to make a kind of sense to him, but they aren't always Oscar bait or anything. So I went to see this expecting very little other than I probably won't be bored. Whilst I'm not going to say, wow, my film of the year, I'm really not. I really, really liked it. I had a really good time with this. And I revisited the first today and didn't enjoy it as much. Although there's quite a lot of connective tissue between the two, because obviously Melissa Leo's in both with her husband, as played by Bill Pullman. The whole watch thing and timing things out was still in there. He was obviously helping people in that. There was a little bit about his hometown and his wife. So there's more connective tissue than I remember, but I think the second's a better film.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a lot more focused. It's a lot more tone. It takes its time. It doesn't feel a need to rush anything, and it has a decent end set piece, doesn't it? It does have like
it's pretty decent, because obviously in the middle of a hurricane. And actually there was the trailer's kind of masterful, because it's total misdirection, because the trailer makes you believe that this boy gets caught up in something and killed, and then the film is basically going to be his revenge for that.
Yeah.
Well, that sequence hinted at in the trailer is relatively late in the film, and it's not what you think it is.
Yeah, it basically triggers like the final act, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But that's cool. That's cool.
I don't feel particularly misled, but technically speaking, we have been.
No, but it's good that you actually watch something like that and you got something out of it.
Yeah.
So
I had a good time, and I feel better about things like that, because I don't look down my nose at action films. I never have. I look down my nose at certain types of action films or certain types of action stars and stuff, but I want to enjoy the broadest palette possible. So, I want to sit and enjoy foreign films. I want to sit and enjoy Oscar bait. I want to sit and enjoy superhero films. I want to sit and enjoy martial arts films and pure action films and stuff. And normally speaking, I've come to start believing of myself as somebody who doesn't like these things. Well, we've covered a few action films tonight, and that's not the case.
Yeah, I think
they've got to be well done.
It goes back to saying, if you want to make a good action film, you have to start by the character, and Equalizer has a good character behind it.
Has a very good character. The plot is not that important, really, although the cleverness of the man, the forensic mind of the man is interesting. Just little things like, to avoid someone getting shot from distance through the boot of a car, he blows out a tyre, and that seems really obvious until you think about it and go, actually, no, he needed to drop it millimetres, and did. Really, really good stuff.
There's always that switch as well of being mild-mannered and just being like, I'm going to kill every one of you. And the only disappointing thing for me so he gets to do it once, and that kind of thing.
But I mean, even there's an old man in the film who's constantly litigating over a painting, and the last scene of the film, he gets like both his sister and the painting. I think.
Yeah.
It's just like that's just lovely, and that is like that's not unlike the way you feel when you watch a Paddington film and see him just going around and being
nice
tremendously lovely to everyone, and you think actually. I don't always meet that standard, and I've got to work harder at it,
Well, I think same for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not having a go at myself there. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It does if you. I don't mean it to sound almost flippant and twee, but genuinely, you do sometimes go.
We need more of it, don't we? And I think it's very easy just to dismiss this kind of stuff, but. No, there is a genuine meaning to it, and we need more.
It's an actioner, but it's not a Liam Neeson actioner where all the personal plot is literally just we got to put something in there. He's got a daughter. What's she up to? Taking a driving test? Yeah, cool. And she's passed. Shall they have a celebratory milkshake? It's like it's all shit. There's sequences in that where he's called Brian or something, and he's having a barbecue with his pals, and I'm just going. None of this just feels organic, and none of it matters. If they could get away without him having any of this, or even a fucking name, they would. Whereas Robert McCall is built from the ground up.
Yeah. The first Taken wasn't too bad. I think the first Taken works a bit more because he was like, almost like,
there was an element of surprise as well because that was his first.
There was a bit of a sense of a father trying to like really like fumbling his way, trying to like make it up to like his daughter who doesn't want anything to do with him almost, or just completely takes him for granted, and that kind of, from the moment she gets kidnapped, it's that kind of snap, like, right.
I'm not really knocking those types of films, but obviously
that is the only good one. You are right about the others. This
falls into a similar genre and style of film and style of character and age of character and background of character as well. The background of the two characters is very similar, but it's night and day, both in actor, and that's less to dig at Liam Neeson and more to exalt Denzel Washington, frankly. I'm not saying Liam Neeson is bad, I'm saying Denzel Washington's that good. But he's supported by a properly written character.
Can you imagine Liam Neeson doing an action film? But
they gave Liam Neeson nothing to work with.
Yeah, can you imagine Liam Neeson doing an action film, but as his character from Love Actually? See, we're laughing, but you know what? I'd watch the shit out of that.
Trying to like encourage the bad guys to watch Titanic with him. Come on, it's good. You'll love it. My wife used to like the Bay City Rollers. Have you ever heard them? No.
Let's get this shit kicked out of us out of love. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to give you a slap. I really don't want to. I was hoping to knob someone who looked like Claudia Schiffer. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's us done for another summer.
Another summer.
So what's next? I don't know what things. Will there be a winter review? I don't know.
Do a winter review if you want, but
we'll see. We'll see what comes up.
There'll definitely be a summer review, and depending on how things shake down, we may do it as one epic show or break them in two again. If you want to do something. Maybe at the end of Oscar season, obviously, let me know. We can definitely do that. I think in terms of anticipation, I would say my interest is certainly piqued by the Freddie Mercury film, Bohemian Rhapsody. Obviously, the story behind it as well, because they fired Bryan Singer, although he's still the director of record on it. I saw a trailer for First Man last night, Damien Chazelle's next film, which seems to be about Neil Armstrong. So that's of interest. And a film I wasn't aware about until about 4 weeks ago, Stan and Ollie, which is obviously it is what you think, Laurel and Hardy, but Laurel and Hardy played by John C. Reilly and Steve Coogan. And it's about a tour in this country.
That almost sounds lovely.
At the end of their career, that's coming out in sort of Oscar season, so whether it's baiting for that sort of thing, I don't know. So apart from that, Aquaman, I've just got cautious optimism for. I don't think the trailers look amazing, but James Wan...
It looks very busy, isn't it? It looks very...
James, yes, it's going to be doing too much, I think. But James Wan has always been a reasonably dependable filmmaker in the way that I never felt about Zack Snyder. So I'm hoping it'll be okay. Apart from that, it's a little bit lighter this year. We've got Venom, which I fully expect to be shit. but we've obviously got no autumn Marvel this time because we've had our Marvel. We got no Star Wars this year.
Got Mary Poppins.
We got Mary Poppins over Christmas, which Charlie Brigden was uncharacteristically fucking furious about. Which that took us all by surprise. I fucking hate Mary Poppins. Bloody hell. So yeah, I'll go see that. It's no problem. But yeah, it's obviously going to be a bit busier next year because we've got Wonder Woman and Bond and other things that are slipping my mind. Star Wars Episode 9 rather. And there are others as well that I've completely forgotten.
Oh crap, we'll have a new Bond film next year, won't we? Shit.
We will. Starring Nelson Mandela.
Breaking into back to Bond, and do you expect to talk?
Yeah, well, yeah. I can predict what my least reliable review of the next 18 months is going to be, because Bond is the only thing where I completely lose my shit with excitement. So it'll come out.
It'll be Daniel Boyle as well, so I'll have something about it.
I'll be claiming it's a masterpiece till about 6 weeks after it's released, and I think we'll do what we did last time. We'll watch it a couple of times in 2 or 3 days, and then we'll do a straight podcast, the three of us. So there will be a podcast on that film out the week it's released. So yeah, but this year's a little bit slighter going forward. I can't even think what the next thing I'm going to go and see is at the moment. And the summer's been okay. It's been a strange summer because, like I say, there's been plenty of big hitters, but there's been an awful lot of B movie as well. So it doesn't feel like it's been a big summer. But
yeah, I think it's just how it's been placed, isn't it? It's just sort of broke up a little bit, but because once we get into summer, you just had that Incredibles and Mission Impossible, and
also in the last 4 or 5 films we covered, we had Skyscraper, The Meg, and The Equalizer 2, which are all either a very B movie or a very B movie in intention, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, we ran out pretty early in the year of all the sort of really big stuff. Mission Impossible aside, obviously.
But yeah, no, I'm actually looking forward to the next Mission Impossible whenever they do that. But yeah, so Dave, where can we find you on the Twitter sphere?
Well, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976. You can find our podcast at Expect Us to Talk on Twitter, or facebook.com/Expect Us to Talk.
Yes, if you want more of me, Dave, you can get it. You're actually on.
There are now hundreds of hours of it.
Oh, just imagine 100 hours of us talking shit. And you can follow me at Simmertronics on Twitter. You can find this podcast and all the Do You Expect to Talk podcasts at simmertronics.co.uk. And that's your lot. So, Dave, thank you for another summer.
Thank you. Let's be pretentious in January or February.
Yes, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
What did you think of this year's Oscar films and what? Something like that.
I don't know what film's going to be out by then.
I can't remember what the Oscar bait is. Oh, we got a new Tarantino film next year as well.
Oh,
that falls into the summer because it's out in August.
That's like Inglourious Bastards time, isn't it? When it came out. Anyway, I think that's a lot. So, thank you for listening, and tatty bye.
Good night, folks.